My wife asked for a divorce. She said, "I want the mansion, the cars, everything except your son." My lawyer and family begged me to fight. I said, "Give it all to her." Everyone thought I'd lost my mind. At the final hearing, I signed everything over. She didn't know I'd already won. She smiled, until her lawyer turned pale when the rain started exactly when Caroline asked for the divorce. I remember because I was watching a single droplet slide down the dining room window, tracing its path against the city lights below, when her voice cut through the silence like a blade through silk. We were sitting at opposite ends of our Italian marble table, the one she'd insisted we import from Carrara, the one that cost more than most people's cars, and the space between us felt like an ocean. "I want a divorce, Marcus." 5 words, 23 letters, one breath that shattered 12 years of marriage. I didn't look at her immediately. I kept watching that raindrop, following its descent, noting how it gathered other drops along the way, growing heavier, more inevitable. There's something about moments like these, moments when your entire life pivots on a single sentence, where time does this strange thing. It slows down and speeds up simultaneously. You notice everything and nothing. The weight of the crystal wine glass in your hand. The taste of the Bordeaux she'd selected because it paired well with the duck. The sound of your own heartbeat in your ears. "Marcus, did you hear me?" This time I looked at her. Caroline. My wife, the woman I'd built an empire for. She sat there in a cream silk blouse that probably cost $3,000, her honey blonde hair pulled back in that effortless way that actually took her stylist an hour to perfect. Her blue eyes, the ones I'd once written terrible poetry about, were steady, unwavering, not cruel, exactly, just resolved. "I heard you," I said. My voice came out calmer than I expected, calm enough that something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe, or disappointment that I wasn't giving her the dramatic scene she might have anticipated. She set down her fork with deliberate precision. The soft clink of silver against china seemed obscenely loud in the quiet. "I've already spoken to Martin Rothschild. He's the best divorce attorney in the state." Of course she had. Caroline didn't do anything without research, without preparation, without stacking the deck in her favor first. It was one of the things I'd admired about her once, back when that calculating nature was directed at planning our future instead of dismantling it. "Rothschild," I repeated, taking another sip of wine. "That's a serious choice." "This is serious, Marcus." She folded her hands on the table, and I noticed she was still wearing her wedding ring. That detail felt important somehow, though I couldn't articulate why. "I want this to be clean, civilized. We're adults." "Civilized," I echoed. The word tasted like ash in my mouth. Thunder rumbled in the distance, a low growl that seemed to come from the earth itself. Our penthouse 47 floors above the city, with windows that stretched from floor to ceiling, felt like we were suspended in the storm itself. Appropriate, I thought. Everything about this moment felt apocalyptic in its quiet way. "I've thought about this for a long time," Caroline continued. She had shifted into what I privately called her presentation mode, the voice she used when pitching ideas to her book club or explaining to the housekeeper why the linens needed to be changed daily. Reasonable, logical, unemotional. "We've grown apart. You know we have. You're always working, always at the office, or traveling for business. When was the last time we actually talked? Really talked?" I could have pointed out that every time I tried to talk to her, really talk, she was busy with her charity galas or her tennis lessons or her spa appointments. I could have mentioned the countless dinners I'd come home to an empty house. A note from her saying she was out with the girls. I could have asked her when exactly she'd stopped looking at me like I was someone she loved and started looking at me like I was a portfolio she was managing. But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I asked, "What do you want?" She blinked, twice, like the question had caught her off guard, even though this was clearly a conversation she'd rehearsed. "What do I want from the divorce? What do you want?" Now something else crossed her face. Not quite relief, but close to it, like she'd been bracing for a fight and was pleasantly surprised to find none coming. She straightened in her chair and I watched her transform before my eyes into the negotiator she'd probably been practicing to be. "I want the house," she said. "Not this penthouse," I noted. "The house, our estate in Blackwood Hills, the one with 12 bedrooms and 8 bathrooms, the one set on 15 acres with its own private lake. And I want the properties, the beach house in Malibu, the ski lodge in Aspen, the apartment in Manhattan." I nodded slowly, saying nothing, letting her continue. "The cars," she went on, and there was a slight hesitation now, as if she was testing how far she could push. "The Bentley, the Range Rover, the Tesla, the vintage Porsche you keep in the garage and never drive. All of them?" "All of them." Her chin lifted slightly. Defiant, daring me to challenge her. "What else?" She took a breath. This was it, I realized. The moment she'd been building toward. Everything. Marcus, the art collection, the jewelry, the wine cellar. Half of your business holdings, obviously. The investment portfolio. She paused, and for the first time that evening, something almost human flickered across her features. Almost like guilt. Almost like hesitation. "Everything except your son." The rain was coming down harder now, sheets of water cascading down the windows, turning the city lights into watercolor smears. "Everything except your son." The words hung in the air between us like smoke. "Ethan," I said quietly. "I'm not a monster, Marcus." Her voice had taken on a defensive edge. "I know how close you are to him. I wouldn't take him from you." Truthfully. She looked away, toward the window, and I saw her throat work as she swallowed. "Truthfully, I've never really connected with him the way a mother should. You know that. He's 14 now. He's old enough to choose, and we both know he'd choose you." There it was. The confession wrapped in practicality. The admission that she'd never really wanted to be a mother, dressed up as generosity. I should have felt angry. I should have felt something hot and explosive rising in my chest, but instead, I felt cold, clear, like the rain had washed away some film I'd been seeing the world through, and now everything was sharp and defined. "So you want everything," I said slowly, "except my son." "Yes, the mansion, the cars, the properties, half my business, the investments, everything we've built together. Yes." I set down my wine glass, stood up. Caroline watched me with those blue eyes, wary now, perhaps expecting the explosion she'd been bracing for all evening, but I didn't explode. I walked to the window and pressed my palm against the cold glass, feeling the vibration of the rain, the thunder, the storm. "All right," I said. The silence that followed was so complete, I could hear the clock ticking in the hallway. An antique piece, German-made, that Caroline had insisted we buy at an estate sale for $15,000 because it had once belonged to some railroad baron. "All right?" Her voice was careful, suspicious. I turned to face her. "Give it all to you. You can have it." She stood now, too, her hands gripping the edge of the table. "Marcus, what are you?" "I mean it, Caroline. You want the mansion? Take it. The cars? They're yours. The properties, the art, the investments, all of it. I won't fight you." The confusion on her face would have been almost comical if the moment weren't so devastating. "You're just giving me everything?" "Everything except Ethan," I confirmed. "That's what you asked for. That's what you'll get." "I don't understand." She was shaking her head now, and I could see her trying to piece together my angle, trying to figure out what game I was playing. Because in Caroline's world, everything was a game. Everything was strategy and counter-strategy, move and counter-move. The idea that someone might simply capitulate seemed to short-circuit her understanding of how these things worked. "There's nothing to understand. You want a divorce. You want everything we've accumulated. Fine, you can have it. I won't contest it. I won't drag you through court. I won't make this ugly." I moved back to the table, picked up my wine glass, drained the last of the Bordeaux. "I'll call my lawyer tomorrow and tell him to draw up whatever papers you need. Uncontested divorce. Complete asset transfer. Whatever Martin Rothschild wants, he can have." Caroline was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. "You're serious?" "Completely." But why would you? She stopped herself, seemed to recalibrate. When she spoke again, her voice was harder, more suspicious. What's the catch? And intestine. With why would you? No catch, Caroline. You get everything. I get Ethan and my freedom. Seems like a fair trade to me. I walked out of the dining room then, leaving her standing there among the ruins of our expensive dinner, surrounded by all the beautiful things she'd insisted we fill our life with. As I climbed the stairs to the upper level where Ethan's room was, I heard her call after me. Marcus, we need to discuss the details. Have your lawyer call mine, I said without turning back. I'm sure they'll work it all out. I found Ethan in his room, headphones on, bent over his desk working on something on his laptop. When he saw me in the doorway, he pulled off the headphones, and I was struck, not for the first time, by how much he looked like my father. The same dark eyes, the same serious expression, the same way of watching the world, like he was trying to solve a complex equation. Hey, Dad. He glanced past me, toward the hallway. Was that Mom yelling? We were just talking. He looked at me for a long moment. Ethan had always been perceptive, even as a small child. He could read a room better than most adults. Talking about what? I sat down on the edge of his bed. The mattress sank under my weight, and I noticed the poster on his wall, a vintage diagram of the Mars rover he'd gotten at the Space Museum last summer. My son wanted to be an aerospace engineer. He spent his free time designing rockets and simulation software and reading books about orbital mechanics that I couldn't even begin to understand. Your mom and I are going to get divorced, I said. No point in dancing around it. Ethan deserved the truth, delivered straight. He didn't look surprised. Didn't even look particularly upset. He just nodded slowly, the way he did when processing information. Okay, you okay with that? Are you? The question caught me off guard. I looked at my son, 14 years old and already wise beyond his years, and I felt something tighten in my chest. I will be, I said. You'll be living with me. Is that all right? Yeah. He said it without hesitation. Then, quieter. Was that ever in question? Not really. Good. He turned back to his laptop, then paused. Dad, can I ask you something? Anything. Are you going to be okay, like financially and stuff? Mom always talked about how she deserved half of everything because of the prenup or whatever. Smart kid, too smart. Don't worry about that, Ethan. I'll handle it. But she's going to take... I said, don't worry. I stood up, ruffled his hair the way I used to when he was small. He tolerated it with good grace. Focus on your schoolwork. Let me deal with the adult stuff. You're sure? I'm sure. After I left his room, I went to my study and closed the door. Poured myself 2 fingers of scotch from the Macallan 30 that Caroline had given me for our 10th anniversary. Sat down in my leather chair and stared at the wall where I'd hung my Harvard Business School diploma, my various awards, the photo of me shaking hands with the governor at some charity event. Then I opened my laptop and started typing. The email was brief. Subject line: accept all terms. Paul, I wrote. My divorce attorney, who'd been with me since I started my first company. My wife wants everything except custody of our son. Give her everything she asks for. Don't fight. Don't negotiate. Whatever asset transfer she proposes, accept it. I want this done quickly and quietly. Full capitulation. Make it happen. I reread it twice, then hit send. My phone rang 30 seconds later. Marcus? What the hell? Paul's voice was sharp with confusion and concern. I just got your email. Are you drunk? Stone sober. Then you've lost your mind. You can't just give her everything. The prenup protects you, but even without it, you have rights. We can negotiate. I don't want to negotiate, Paul. I want to give her what she wants. Marcus, listen to me. I've been your attorney for 15 years. I've never seen a case where complete capitulation was the smart move. Caroline's asking for 90% of your assets. The mansion alone is worth... I know what it's worth. Give it to her anyway. The business holdings. Give them to her. Marcus. Paul. I said his name quietly, but with enough force that he stopped talking. This is what I want. Draw up the papers, make it happen, and do it fast. There was a long pause. Then, you're making a huge mistake. Maybe, I said, but it's my mistake to make. After I hung up, I sat in the dark for a long time, listening to the rain, the thunder, the storm that seemed to be trying to tear the sky apart, and I smiled. Because what none of them knew, not Caroline, not Paul, not even Ethan, was that I'd been preparing for this moment for 3 years. 3 years since I'd found the first text message on Caroline's phone. 3 years since I'd hired the private investigator. 3 years since I'd started moving pieces across a chessboard that Caroline didn't even know we were playing on. She thought I was going to fight her in court, waste time and money in a bitter divorce battle. She thought I was going to contest everything, make her prove she deserved what she was asking for. She had no idea that fighting her in court was the last thing I wanted. No idea that every property she was demanding, every asset she was claiming, every piece of our empire she was dividing up, all of it, was about to become an anchor around her neck. No idea that I'd spent 3 years, carefully, methodically, legally, setting up a trap so elegant, so complete, so absolutely perfect, that by the time she realized what had happened, it would be too late. The rain continued to fall, and in the darkness of my study, I raised my glass to the storm. To new beginnings, I said to the empty room, and somewhere in the universe of future consequences, I could almost hear the first domino starting to fall. The morning after Caroline asked for the divorce, I woke to 17 missed calls. Sunlight streamed through the windows of the guest room where I'd slept. I'd moved out of the master bedroom that same night, turning the hardwood floors into pools of gold. For a moment, just a brief, merciful moment, I forgot what had happened. Then reality crashed back in like a wave, and I reached for my phone. 9 calls from Paul, 3 from my brother David, 2 from my sister Jennifer, 1 from my mother, 2 from numbers I didn't recognize but suspected were reporters. Caroline moved fast when she wanted something, and apparently she wanted the world to know about our divorce before the ink was even dry on the separation papers. I sat up, ran my hands through my hair, and checked the time. 7:30. Ethan would be getting ready for school. I needed to talk to him, make sure he was okay, make sure last night's revelation hadn't shattered him the way it might have shattered a different kid. But first, I needed coffee. The kitchen was empty when I got downstairs. No Caroline. No sound of her morning routine, the espresso machine she insisted we buy from Italy, the particular way she arranged her breakfast of Greek yogurt and granola and exactly 17 blueberries. I'd counted once, years ago, amused by her precision. Now it just seemed sad. All that control, all that careful curation of every aspect of life. And for what? I made my coffee in the French press I preferred. The one Caroline said was pedestrian compared to her elaborate espresso setup. While it steeped, I scrolled through my messages. Paul's texts were increasingly frantic. Marcus, call me immediately. This is serious. You need to reconsider. Your entire family is calling me. They think you've had a breakdown. Call me. David's were more direct. What the fuck are you doing? Mom is losing her mind. Call her. Seriously, bro. Call me before you sign anything else. My mother's single text was somehow worse than all the others combined. Marcus, darling, I'm worried about you. Please call when you can. I love you. I pressed the plunger down on the French press, watching the ground sink to the bottom, and took a long sip of black coffee. It burned my tongue. Good. I needed to feel something sharp and real to counter the surreal quality of everything else. My phone rang. Paul again. Morning, Paul. Don't morning, Paul me. His voice was tight with frustration. I've been trying to reach you for hours. Your brother called me at 6 a.m. 6 a.m., Marcus. Your mother called my wife. Your sister showed up at my office yesterday, demanding to know if you'd suffered a head injury. I'm fine. You're not fine. Nobody who's fine gives away $100 million without a fight. I walked to the window, looked out over the manicured grounds of our estate. The gardeners were already at work, trimming hedges, tending to the rose garden that Caroline had designed with a landscape architect who'd won awards. Everything perfect. Everything controlled. Everything dying from the roots up while looking beautiful on the surface. Paul, I told you. I know what you told me. I'm telling you it's insane. Caroline's lawyer sent over the preliminary asset division last night. Do you want to know what she's asking for? I already know. Everything. Everything is right. The Blackwood estate, $42 million. The Malibu property, $18 million. Aspen, $12 million. The Manhattan apartment, $9 million. That's $81 million in real estate alone, Marcus. Then there's the cars, the art collection, the wine cellar. She wants half your stock portfolio, which is another $30 million. Half your business holdings in tech venture capital, do you understand that's another $40 million? This woman is walking away with close to $200 million, and you're just letting her? Yes. Why? The word came out like a gunshot. Why would you do this? Even if you don't want to fight, even if you want a quick divorce, we can negotiate. We can protect some of your assets. The prenup gives you leverage. You don't have to give her everything she wants. I took another sip of coffee, watched a butterfly land on the window, its wings catching the morning light. Delicate, beautiful, fleeting. Paul, do you trust me? What? It's a simple question. Do you trust me? There was a long pause. Then, cautiously, of course I trust you. You're one of the smartest men I know. That's why this doesn't make sense. Then trust me now. Trust that I know what I'm doing. Trust that I have my reasons. What reasons? Marcus, talk to me. Help me understand. Because right now, it looks like you're having some kind of breakdown. Your family thinks you're depressed. Your brother thinks Caroline has something on you, some kind of blackmail. Your mother thinks... My mother thinks what? She thinks you're being noble, sacrificing yourself because you blame yourself for the marriage failing. She's worried you're punishing yourself. I almost laughed. Almost. Because my mother, who'd known me for 42 years, who'd raised me, who'd watched me build my fortune from nothing, even she couldn't see what I was really doing. Tell my family I'm fine. Tell them I know exactly what I'm doing. And Paul, finalize those papers. I want this divorce done in 30 days. 30 days? Marcus, that's impossible. Even with an uncontested divorce, the paperwork alone. Make it happen. I'll pay whatever it takes to expedite the process. I want this done. Fast. I hung up before he could argue further. The coffee was getting cold, but I finished it anyway, staring out at the perfect grounds, the perfect house, the perfect life that had become a perfect prison. My phone buzzed again. David this time. I considered ignoring it, but my brother was nothing if not persistent. If I didn't answer, he'd drive over here himself, probably with Jennifer in tow, ready for an intervention. Hey David, are you out of your fucking mind? No preamble. That was David, straight to the point. Consequences be damned. Good morning to you too. Don't good morning me. Jennifer is on her way over. Mom wants to fly in from Boston. Everyone thinks you've lost it, Marcus. And honestly, I'm starting to agree with them. I heard noise in the background, David's kids arguing over something, his wife trying to mediate. Normal family chaos. The kind Caroline had always disdained, preferring our quiet, controlled, sterile existence. I haven't lost anything, I said, except a wife who stopped loving me years ago. So you give her everything? That's your solution? Marcus, you worked your ass off for that money. You built Tech Venture from the ground up. You earned every penny. And you're just handing it over to a woman who he stopped himself. Who, what? Nothing. David, a sigh. Who doesn't deserve it? There, I said it. Caroline doesn't deserve a fraction of what she's taking. She married you when you were already successful. She didn't build anything with you. She just spent your money and complained that you worked too much. You're not wrong. Then why are you doing this? I walked out of the kitchen, through the living room, with its uncomfortable designer furniture that Caroline had selected because it was statement pieces, not because anyone would actually want to sit on them. Up the stairs, past the master bedroom where I could hear water running, Caroline's morning shower no doubt, and back to the guest room. Because sometimes the best way to win is to let your opponent think they've won, I said quietly. Silence on the other end. Then, what does that mean? It means trust me. Can you do that? Can you tell Jennifer and Mom to trust me? Marcus, you're scaring me. Don't be scared. Be patient. And David, when this is all over, when the dust settles, remind me to take you and Jennifer out for the most expensive dinner in the city. My treat. You're talking in riddles. I know, but I need you to trust me anyway. Can you do that? Another long pause. David and I had been close our entire lives. We'd fought. Sure, what brothers didn't? But we'd also built forts together as kids. Started a lemonade stand that actually turned a profit. Survived our father's death when I was 19 and he was 16. If anyone was going to trust me blindly, it would be David. Okay, he finally said. I'll trust you. But Marcus, if you're doing something stupid, if you're throwing your life away for some reason I don't understand yet, I'm not, then what are you doing? I smiled at the ceiling, at the crown molding that Caroline had insisted we install at enormous expense because it was authentic Victorian or some such nonsense. I'm playing chess, I said, and I'm about 3 moves from checkmate. After I hung up with David, I showered, dressed, and went to check on Ethan. He was in his room, backpack already packed, scrolling through something on his phone. Ready for school? I asked. He looked up, and I saw the question in his eyes before he asked it. Is Mom still here? She's here. Why? Just wondering if I should, say goodbye or something, since we're getting divorced and everything. The casual way he said it, like discussing a change in the weather, should have reassured me. Instead, it made my chest ache. 14 years old, and already so practiced at emotional distance. I wondered how much of that was his personality, and how much was learned behavior from living with Caroline. You don't have to if you don't want to, I said carefully, but you should know that you'll still see your mom. This divorce doesn't mean she disappears from your life. Ethan looked at me with those serious, dark eyes. Dad, can I be honest? Always. I won't really miss seeing her that much. Does that make me a bad person? I sat down next to him on his bed. No, buddy. It makes you honest. She was never really around, Like she was physically present sometimes, but she never really cared about my stuff. The rocket designs, the coding projects, any of it. She'd ask how school was, but she didn't actually want to know. She just wanted to check off the good mother box and move on. The accuracy of his assessment knocked the wind out of me. Ethan. It's okay, Dad. Really. I figured out a long time ago that not every parent is the same. Some of my friends have moms who are super involved. Some have moms who are barely there. I got the barely there kind. It's fine. I had you. Had you. Present tense, pretending to be past tense. Like he already understood that this divorce was going to change things, reshape our family into something new. You still have me, I said. That's not changing. I know. He stood up, shouldered his backpack. Are you going to be okay? Like, money-wise? I heard you tell Mom she could have everything. You were listening. The vent in my room connects to the dining room. Sound travels. He shrugged, unapologetic. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but once I heard, I couldn't exactly unhear it. To answer your question, yes, I'm going to be okay. More than okay. How? If she takes everything. She's not taking everything, Ethan. She's taking things. Houses, cars, money. Things can be replaced. The important stuff, that stays with me. He studied my face for a long moment, and I saw something shift in his expression. Recognition, maybe. Or the beginning of understanding that there was more to this situation than what appeared on the surface. You have a plan, he said. Not a question. A statement. I have a plan. Is it a good plan? It's a very good plan. He grinned then, sudden and bright, and for a moment he looked like the little boy who used to bring me his broken toys to fix, absolutely confident that his dad could solve any problem. Cool, he said. Can I know what it is? Not yet, but soon. Fair enough. He headed for the door, then turned back. Dad, whatever you're doing, Whatever this plan is, I'm glad you're not just rolling over and letting her win. She doesn't deserve to win." After he left for school, the house felt simultaneously too large and too small. I avoided Caroline not difficult, as she seemed to be avoiding me as well, and drove to my office in the city. Tech Venture Capital occupied the top 3 floors of a glass tower in the financial district. I'd started the firm 12 years ago with money from my first startup exit, and we'd grown into one of the most successful venture capital funds in the region. We invested in early-stage tech companies, helped them grow, took them public, or sold them to larger firms. It was lucrative work, and I was good at it. Or at least, I had been good at it. What Caroline didn't know, what nobody knew except for my accountant, my lawyer, and me, was that Tech Venture Capital had been systematically divesting from profitable ventures for the past 2 years. On paper, the fund was worth $40 million. In reality, it was worth considerably less. I'd been careful, strategic. Every divestment had a legitimate business reason. Every shift in portfolio allocation made sense if you understood market trends. To an outside observer, to an auditor, to Caroline's high-priced divorce attorney, everything looked normal. But the truth was, I'd been moving money. Quietly, legally, brilliantly. And the best part? Caroline wanted half of Tech Venture Capital. She was going to get it. She was going to get half of a sinking ship. My phone buzzed as I stepped off the elevator. Jennifer this time. My sister. The family mediator. The peacekeeper. The one who always tried to find middle ground. "Before you start," I said, "I'm fine." David says, "You're playing chess. What does that mean?" I walked through the office, past the receptionist who smiled and waved, past the conference rooms where my partners were probably already in meetings, to my corner office with its view of the harbor. "It means I know what I'm doing, Jen. Marcus, I love you. You know I do. But giving away your entire fortune to a woman who never appreciated you isn't what I'd call knowing what you're doing. It sounds like self-destruction." I sat down at my desk, pulled up my computer, logged into the encrypted server where I kept my real records. The ones Caroline would never see. The ones that told the true story of the past 3 years. "What if I told you," I said slowly, "that I'm not giving anything away? What if I told you that every asset Caroline is demanding is about to become worthless?" "What are you talking about?" "I can't explain yet, but I need you to do something for me. I need you to trust me, and I need you to keep Mom calm. Can you do that?" "Marcus, can you do that, Jennifer?" A long exhale. "Fine. Yes, I'll trust you. But if this blows up in your face, if you end up homeless and broken, I'm going to say, 'I told you so.' If I end up homeless and broken, you'll have earned the right." After we hung up, I sat in my office for a long time, looking at the screens full of data, the carefully constructed paper trail that told one story while hiding another. 3 years ago, I'd found the text message on Caroline's phone, a message from someone named Alex that was unmistakably romantic, unmistakably intimate, unmistakably evidence that my wife was having an affair. I'd sat in our bedroom, holding her phone, reading through months of messages I wasn't supposed to see. And instead of confronting her, instead of exploding, instead of doing what most men would do, I'd taken a screenshot, put her phone back exactly where I'd found it, and started planning. Planning for this moment. Planning for the day when Caroline would ask for a divorce and demand everything I'd built. Planning for the moment when I could give her exactly what she wanted and watch as it destroyed her. My computer pinged. An email from Paul. Caroline's lawyer is pushing for a hearing next week. They want to expedite. Should I push back? I typed back, "No. Accept the date. The sooner the better." Then I opened another file. The one labeled Evidence. The one containing 3 years of documentation, 3 years of proof, 3 years of ammunition. And I smiled, because Caroline thought she was getting everything. But what she was really getting was exactly what she deserved. Nothing. The intervention happened on a Tuesday. I should have seen it coming. Should have anticipated that my mother flying in from Boston, my brother clearing his entire afternoon schedule, and my sister asking to meet at David's house instead of a restaurant. meant something more than a casual family gathering. But I'd been so focused on the legal machinery grinding into motion, so absorbed in the careful choreography of my own plans, that I walked into David's living room completely unprepared for what awaited me. They were all there. Mom on the sofa, her hands folded in her lap in that particular way that meant she was holding herself together through sheer force of will. David, standing by the fireplace, arms crossed, his lawyer face on. Jennifer perched on the arm of a chair, looking like she wanted to mediate a conflict that hadn't even started yet. And Paul, my attorney, my friend, the man I'd explicitly told not to share details with my family, sitting in David's reading chair looking guilty as hell. "Marcus," Mom said, standing as I entered. She crossed the room and pulled me into a hug that lasted several heartbeats too long. When she pulled back, I saw tears in her eyes. "Thank you for coming." Did I have a choice? I looked around at the assembled faces. "This looks remarkably like an ambush." "It's not an ambush," Jennifer said quickly. "It's a conversation. We're worried about you." "A worried conversation with my lawyer present?" I turned to Paul. "Really?" He had the decency to look uncomfortable. "They cornered me, Marcus. Your mother called my office. Your brother showed up at my house. What was I supposed to do?" "Not violate attorney-client privilege, for starters." "I didn't tell them anything privileged," Paul said, defensive now. "I just confirmed that yes, you're proceeding with an uncontested divorce, and yes, you're giving Caroline basically everything she's asking for. That's not privileged information. That's going to be public record in a few weeks anyway." I walked to David's window, looked out at his backyard where his kids were playing on a swing set, 7 and 9 years old, laughing, pushing each other, completely oblivious to the adult drama unfolding inside, innocent in a way Ethan had never quite been, even as a child. "So this is what?" I asked without turning around. "An intervention? You're going to tell me I'm making a mistake, that I need to fight Caroline, that I'm throwing my life away?" "Something like that," David said, "except we're hoping you'll actually listen instead of speaking in cryptic riddles about chess games and checkmates." I turned to face them. All these people who loved me, who thought they were protecting me, who couldn't see the larger picture because I hadn't let them see it. And I felt, suddenly, crushingly tired. Tired of keeping secrets, tired of playing the long game alone, tired of watching everyone I cared about think I'd lost my mind. "Sit down, Marcus," Mom said gently. "Please." I sat, not because I had to, but because refusing would only make this harder. Mom settled back onto the sofa next to me, and I could smell her perfume, the same Chanel. No. 5 she'd worn my entire life. The scent of childhood, of comfort, of unconditional love. "I know you think you're doing the right thing," she began, and I recognized the tone. The same one she'd used when I was 16 and wanted to drop out of high school to start a business, or when I was 25 and wanted to invest everything I had into my first startup. Loving but firm. Concerned but respectful. "But darling, I need you to help me understand. Why are you giving Caroline everything? And please, don't tell me it's because you're playing chess. Explain it to me like I'm your mother, who loves you and doesn't want to see you destroy yourself." "I'm not destroying myself." "Then, what are you doing?" Jennifer leaned forward. "Because from where we're sitting, it looks like you've given up. Like you're so hurt, so done with fighting, that you're just handing over everything you've worked for rather than deal with a messy divorce. Is that what you all think?" I looked around the room. "That I'm having some kind of breakdown? That I'm self-destructing?" "Are you?" David's voice was quiet but intense. "Because, Marcus, you're not acting like yourself. The brother I know, the man who fought his way through Harvard on scholarships, who built a fortune from nothing, who never backed down from a challenge, that man wouldn't just roll over and let his wife take everything. Maybe that man got tired of fighting." "Bullshit." David moved closer, and I could see the frustration radiating off him. "You don't get tired. You get strategic. So either you're having a breakdown, or you're playing some game none of us can see. Which is it?" I met his eyes, held his gaze, and I made a decision. "Paul," I said, still looking at my brother, "what I'm about to tell them, it's not privileged information, is it? It's just facts about my own business dealings?" "Depends on the facts," Paul said carefully. The divestment of Tech Venture Capital's portfolio over the past 2 years, the restructuring of asset allocations, the liquidation of certain properties. That's not privileged, is it? That's just business. Paul's eyes widened. Marcus. Is it privileged? No, he admitted. It's public record if anyone cares to look. But, then I'm going to tell them. I turned back to my family. I'm going to tell you what I've been doing for the past 3 years. But before I do, you all need to understand something. What I'm about to explain cannot leave this room. Not yet. Not until the divorce is finalized. Can you agree to that? Mom reached over and took my hand. Of course, darling. David? Jennifer? 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 They both nodded. All right. I stood, needed to move, needed to pace. 3 years ago, I found text messages on Caroline's phone. She was having an affair. Had been for at least 6 months at that point, maybe longer. Someone named Alex. I never confronted her about it, never let on that I knew. I just took screenshots and started planning. The silence in the room was absolute. Mom's hand had gone to her mouth. Jennifer had gone pale. David's jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscles working. Planning for what? Mom whispered. Planning for this. For the divorce I knew was coming. Caroline didn't love me anymore. Maybe she never really had. She loved the lifestyle, the money, the status. And I realized that eventually she'd want out. She'd want to take as much as she could and start fresh with someone who actually made her happy. So you've known for 3 years that she was cheating, Jennifer said slowly. And you just let it continue? I documented it. Every text message, every late night working, every weekend girls' trip, that I could prove she wasn't actually on a girls' trip. I hired a private investigator. Thomas Brennan Paul knows him, one of the best in the business. For 3 years, Thomas compiled evidence, photos, videos, financial records, phone records, everything. Paul was shaking his head. Marcus, you never told me you had this kind of evidence. If you'd known, you would have advised me to use it in the divorce proceedings, to fight Caroline, to contest her claims, to reduce what she'd get in the settlement. And that's exactly what I didn't want. Why the hell not? David exploded. Marcus, with that kind of evidence, you could have protected your assets. You could have walked away with everything and left her with nothing. She's the one who cheated. She's the one who broke the marriage vows. Why are you protecting her? I'm not protecting her. I stopped pacing, turned to face them all. I'm setting her up. Mom's eyes were searching my face. I don't understand. Neither do I, Jennifer added. If you have proof she was unfaithful, that's leverage. That's power in a divorce. Why aren't you using it? I walked to David's bookshelf, ran my fingers along the spines. Law books, mostly. Business texts. A few novels Caroline had probably given him as gifts. The kind of literary fiction she thought made her look intellectual. Everything organized, everything in its place, everything a lie pretending to be truth. The properties Caroline is demanding, I said. The Blackwood estate, the Malibu beach house, the Aspen Lodge, the Manhattan apartment. Do you know what they all have in common? Silence. They're all mortgaged to the absolute limit. The Blackwood estate? We refinanced it 2 years ago, took out a $15 million loan against it to invest in opportunities. The Malibu property? Another $8 million in debt. Aspen? $5 million. Manhattan? $7 million. Caroline thinks she's getting $81 million in real estate. What she's actually getting is $35 million in equity and $46 million in debt. Paul had gone very still. You deliberately over-leveraged your properties. I did, and I did it legally, properly, with full documentation and legitimate business reasons for each loan. The money didn't disappear. It went into investments, into funds, into assets Caroline knows nothing about and will never think to look for. But as far as the divorce settlement goes, as far as what she's claiming the properties themselves, not the equity, the properties. Oh my God, Jennifer breathed. She's going to inherit your debt. $46 million of it in real estate alone. Then there's the cars all leased, not owned, with lease agreements that transfer to her name upon divorce. The art collection? Insured for $3 million, but I had it appraised last month. Actual value? Maybe 1.2. She overpaid for everything because she trusted dealers who saw her coming from a mile away. The wine cellar? Half the bottles are fake. I had an expert evaluate them last year. The ones that are real are worth maybe 10% of what we paid. David had started to smile. A slow, dawning smile of understanding and something close to awe. What about the business holdings? Tech venture capital is the masterpiece, I said, and I couldn't keep the satisfaction out of my voice. On paper, it's worth $40 million. Caroline wants half, which is $20 million. But for the past 2 years, I've been systematically divesting from profitable ventures and reinvesting in high-risk startups that look good on paper but are essentially money pits. The fund is actually worth about $12 million now, maybe less, and it's losing money every quarter. She's going to get half of a failing business that will require constant capital injection just to stay afloat. The stock portfolio? Mom asked. She'd recovered from her initial shock and was now listening with the sharp attention she'd always brought to financial matters. My mother hadn't built her own small fortune by being naive about money. $30 million on paper, I confirmed, but it's heavily weighted toward volatile tech stocks that are currently overvalued. I've been tracking the market carefully. There's going to be a correction in the next 6 months. When it hits, that $30 million will drop to maybe 18, $20 million, and half of it will be hers to watch crash. Paul was standing now, pacing in the same pattern I'd been using moments before. This is brilliant. Insane, but brilliant. You've essentially hollowed out your assets while maintaining the appearance of wealth. Exactly. Caroline sees mansions and cars and investments. What she doesn't see is that she's inheriting a house of cards. The properties have massive mortgages and property taxes she won't be able to afford. The cars have lease payments. The art is worthless. The wine is fake. The business is failing. The stocks are about to crash. She's not getting $200 million. She's getting a mountain of debt and rapidly depreciating assets. But you're still losing money, Jennifer pointed out. Even if she gets less than she thinks, you're still giving up actual equity, actual value. About $60 million total, yes, I agreed. But I've moved $90 million offshore and into protected trusts and investments she can't touch. Legally, properly, through entirely legitimate business channels. The $60 million I'm losing is the cost of getting Caroline out of my life without a prolonged court battle. And here's the beautiful part she thinks she's won. She thinks she's played me perfectly. She has no idea that every asset she's demanding is poison. Mom was looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Pride, maybe, or concern, or some mixture of both. What happens when she realizes, she asked quietly, when the stocks crash, when she can't make the mortgage payments, when she discovers the art is fake and the wine is worthless? What happens then? Then she has 3 choices, I said. She can liquidate everything, take whatever she can get, and walk away with maybe $20 million after taxes and fees. A far cry from the $200 million she thinks she's getting. She can try to sue me for fraud, but she'll lose, because everything I did was legal and documented. Every loan had a legitimate business purpose. Every divestment made strategic sense. I didn't hide assets. I just restructured them. Or, David prompted, or she can try to keep everything, maintain the properties, hold on to the stocks, run the business. But that will require constant capital injection, millions per year just to maintain. And where is that money going to come from? She's never worked a day in her life. She has no income stream, no business experience, no financial acumen. She'll burn through whatever liquid assets she gets within 2 years trying to maintain a lifestyle she can't afford. The room was quiet for a long moment. Outside, David's kids were still playing, their laughter filtering through the windows. Innocent, happy, oblivious to the complexity of adult revenge. You've been planning this for 3 years, Jennifer said finally. 3 years of pretending everything was normal. 3 years of sleeping next to a woman you knew was betraying you. 3 years of methodically dismantling your own empire just to make sure she'd inherit the ruins. Marcus, that's... She trailed off, searching for the word. Cold? I supplied. Calculated? Ruthless? I was going to say brilliant, she said quietly, but also incredibly sad. Mom squeezed my hand. Why didn't you just leave her when you found out? Why put yourself through 3 more years of a false marriage? Because leaving wouldn't have been enough. I sat back down next to her. If I'd confronted her, if I'd initiated the divorce, she would have fought. She would have hired the best lawyers, dragged it through court, made everything public and ugly. And even with evidence of her affair, she still would have walked away with tens of millions. The prenup protects some assets, but not all of them. She'd have gotten enough to maintain her lifestyle, to live comfortably, to never face any real consequences for what she did. And you wanted her to face consequences, David said. I wanted her to get exactly what she asked for. She wanted my empire? She can have it. Every leveraged property, every failing investment, every depreciating asset. She wanted everything. She'll get everything, and it will slowly, inexorably, beautifully destroy the life she thought she was securing. Paul was looking at me with something like admiration mixed with concern. Marcus, I have to ask, is this about justice, or is this about revenge? I thought about that, really thought about it, about the 3 years of lying next to someone who'd stopped loving me, the 3 years of watching her spend my money while texting her lover, the 3 years of Ethan being raised by a mother who couldn't be bothered to care about his interests, his passions, his life, the 3 years of building something I knew would eventually crumble, of playing a role in my own marriage, of becoming a ghost in my own home. Does it matter? I asked finally. It might, Paul said, because if this is just revenge, if you're willing to lose $60 million just to watch Caroline suffer, then you're letting her destroy you even as you destroy her. You're letting the anger consume you. But if it's justice, Mom added gently, if it's about making sure someone faces the natural consequences of their choices, about protecting yourself and Ethan, about ensuring that deceit doesn't pay, then it's something different. I looked at my mother, at David and Jennifer, at Paul, who'd been my friend long before he became my lawyer, at all these people who loved me enough to stage an intervention, who cared enough to be worried, who trusted me enough to listen to my insane plan and actually consider it. It's both, I admitted. It's justice for what she did to our marriage, to Ethan, to me. But it's also revenge for every lie, every betrayal, every moment. She made me feel like I wasn't enough. And maybe that makes me petty. Maybe it makes me cold. But I'm okay with that. I'm not sure I am, Mom said quietly. Darling, I understand why you're doing this. I even admire the strategy of it. But I worry about what it's costing you. Not financially, emotionally. 3 years is a long time to carry this kind of anger. I'm not angry anymore, I said, and realized it was true. I was, at first. When I found those messages, I was furious. But anger faded into something colder, more focused. This isn't about emotion anymore. It's about execution. That's what worries me, she said. Jennifer stood, walked over, sat on the coffee table directly in front of me. Promise me that when this is over, when Caroline realizes what you've done, when your revenge or justice or whatever we're calling it is complete, promise me you'll let it go. Promise me you won't become someone defined by what she did to you. I promise, I said. This ends with a divorce. After that, I move on. I focus on Ethan, on rebuilding, on actually being happy instead of just pretending. She studied my face for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, I believe you. David cleared his throat. So what happens now? What's the timeline? The hearing is next week, Paul said. Preliminary asset division. If everything goes as planned, if Caroline's lawyer presents their demands and Marcus accepts them without contest, we could have this finalized within 30 days. And then? Mom asked. And then, I said, Caroline gets exactly what she wanted. And I get exactly what I wanted. Freedom, my son. and the satisfaction of knowing that the woman who betrayed me is going to spend the next decade of her life slowly realizing that everything she took from me was worthless. I stood up, looked at each of them in turn. I know this seems extreme. I know you think I should have just walked away, taken the high road, let her have a clean win. But I couldn't do that. I couldn't let her believe that betrayal pays, that you can destroy someone and walk away richer for it. So yes, I built an elaborate trap. Yes, I'm giving her exactly what she asked for, knowing it will destroy her. And no, I don't feel guilty about it. You shouldn't, David said firmly. She made her choices. She chose to cheat. She chose to demand everything. You're just making sure she gets what she deserves. Amen to that, Jennifer added. Mom stood, pulled me into another hug. I still think this is too cold, too calculated. But I'm your mother. I'm going to support you no matter what. Just remember, revenge is a poison. Make sure it doesn't consume you in the process. It won't, I promised. I've already won, Mom. I won the moment she asked for everything. Everything else is just watching the dominoes fall. As I drove home later, the sun was setting over the harbor, painting the water gold and crimson, beautiful and temporary, like everything in life. I thought about Caroline, probably at home, planning her victory, imagining her new life funded by my empire. I thought about Ethan, resilient and brilliant, who'd be fine no matter what happened. I thought about the hearing next week, where I'd sit calmly and sign away everything she demanded. And I smiled. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's silent. Sometimes it's watching someone celebrate a victory that hasn't happened yet. Sometimes it's giving them exactly what they want, and knowing that what they want will destroy them. The dominoes were lined up. All I had to do was wait for them to fall. The week before the hearing, I did something I hadn't done in 3 years. I opened the evidence room. That's not its official name, of course. Officially, it's a storage unit I rent under the name of a shell company, located in an industrial complex 20 miles outside the city, where nobody I know would ever have reason to go. 10 by 10 feet of climate-controlled space, containing 3 years of documentation, 3 years of proof, 3 years of my wife's betrayal cataloged and organized with the same meticulous attention to detail I'd once brought to building my business empire. The key felt heavy in my hand as I stood outside Unit 237. Behind me, the fluorescent lights of the corridor buzzed and flickered, casting everything in a sickly yellow glow. Appropriate, somehow. Nothing about this place was meant to be comfortable or inviting. It was utilitarian, functional. A tomb for a marriage that had died years before anyone bothered to bury it. I unlocked the door, rolled it up, stepped inside. The boxes were stacked neatly along the walls, each one labeled with dates: January 2022, March 2022, April 2022, June 2022. On and on, a timeline of deception rendered in cardboard and manila folders. In the center of the room sat a table cheap folding thing from a hardware store, and on that table, a laptop. My shadow laptop. The one that existed off any network, that had never connected to Wi-Fi, that contained copies of everything Thomas Brennan had collected. I sat down, opened it, waited for it to boot up. While I waited, I let myself remember the day I'd found the first message. It had been a Saturday morning. Caroline had been in the shower, and her phone had buzzed on the nightstand. I'd glanced at it without thinking, the automatic reflex of a spouse who has nothing to hide and assumes the same of their partner. Can't wait to see you tonight. Last night was incredible. The message was from Alex. No last name, just Alex. And below it, a string of previous messages that I'd opened before my brain caught up with my fingers, before I understood what I was seeing, before the world tilted sideways and rearranged itself into a new, sharper, crueler configuration. I remember sitting on the edge of the bed, holding her phone, reading through weeks of messages while the shower ran and Caroline hummed something tuneless behind the bathroom door, reading about hotels and late nights and excuses she'd made to me that I'd believed without question, Reading about how Alex made her feel alive, made her feel seen, made her feel things she said she'd never felt with me. The shower had turned off. I'd heard her stepping out, drying herself, beginning her elaborate morning routine. I'd taken screenshots, dozens of them, sent them to my own phone, deleted the evidence that I'd sent them, put her phone back exactly where it had been. And when she'd emerged from the bathroom, wrapped in her silk robe with her hair turbaned in a towel, I'd smiled at her and asked if she wanted breakfast. She'd said no, she had a charity brunch, she'd be gone most of the day. I'd said that was fine. I had work to catch up on anyway. She'd left an hour later, and I'd sat in our bedroom for a long time after, staring at the screenshots on my phone, watching my marriage dissolve in pixels and text messages. The laptop finished booting. I entered the password Ethan's birthday backwards, followed by Caroline's, a reminder of what I was protecting and what I was destroying. The screen illuminated, casting blue light across my face, and I opened the main folder. 3 years of documentation stared back at me. I clicked on the subfolder labeled Alex Monroe. That had been Thomas's first major discovery. Alex wasn't short for Alexander, it was short for Alexandra. Caroline's affair wasn't with another man. It was with a woman, a 32-year-old interior designer named Alexandra Monroe who'd been hired to redesign our Malibu property 2.5 years ago. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd paid for the renovation that had introduced my wife to her lover. I opened Alex's file. Photos first. Thomas had been thorough. Alex was beautiful in that effortless way. Some people managed tall, athletic, with short dark hair and sharp cheekbones. In the photos Thomas had taken, she was usually in expensive casual wear. Designer jeans, cashmere sweaters, the kind of subtle wealth that Caroline had always aspired to but never quite achieved because she tried too hard. There were photos of them together, entering hotels, leaving restaurants, walking on the beach at Malibu, holding hands where they thought no one was watching. In one photo, taken with a telephoto lens from a considerable distance, Caroline was laughing at something Alex had said, her head thrown back, her whole body angled toward Alex like a plant toward the sun. I'd seen Caroline laugh like that once upon a time. Early in our relationship, back when I was building my first startup and everything was possible and we'd stay up until 3 a.m. talking about the future, back before the future arrived and turned out to be exactly what we'd worked for and nothing like what we'd wanted, I closed the photo folder, opened the financial records. This was where Thomas had really earned his substantial fee. He'd tracked every hotel charge, every restaurant receipt, every suspicious transaction. But more than that, he'd found the money trail I hadn't known existed. Caroline had been siphoning funds, small amounts at first, barely noticeable, 500 here, 1,000 there, withdrawn from our joint accounts with vague explanations about charity donations or shopping trips. Over 3 years, she'd moved nearly $400,000 into a private account I'd never known she had, an account she'd opened 2 months after the affair with Alex began. Planning for her future, presumably. Building a nest egg for when she finally left me. Smart, in a way. If I'd been anyone else, if I hadn't found those text messages, if I hadn't hired Thomas, she might have gotten away with it. But I had found them, and Thomas had found everything else. I scrolled through the documents. Credit card statements showing charges at jewelry stores, gifts for Alex, not me. Phone records showing hundreds of calls to Alex's number, often late at night when Caroline claimed to be asleep beside me. Text messages that ranged from the mundane, picking up dry cleaning, to the explicit, I closed those files quickly. I didn't need to torture myself with the details. And then there were the emails. Caroline had been careful with her texts, but less careful with her email. She'd set up a separate account, not hard to find once you knew to look for it, and in that account, she'd saved everything. Messages to Alex about their future together. Messages to a real estate agent about properties they'd looked at in Santa Fe, where Alex had family. Messages to a lawyer, not Martin Rothschild, someone else. Someone she'd consulted a year ago about DivorceStrategy. I opened that email chain. Read it again, even though I'd memorized every word. I want to leave my husband, but I need to make sure I'm protected financially. He's worth well over $200 million. I've been a stay-at-home wife for most of our marriage. What are my options? The lawyer's response had been thorough, detailed, had outlined exactly how much Caroline could expect in a divorce, what she'd need to prove, how to maximize her settlement. Had recommended documenting everything, keeping receipts, building a case for her contributions to our lifestyle. Caroline had followed that advice. For a year, she'd been preparing for this divorce, while pretending everything was normal, while kissing me goodnight and asking about my day and playing the role of wife. And I'd let her, because I'd been preparing too. I closed the laptop, sat in the silence of the storage unit, surrounded by the evidence of my wife's betrayal, and felt nothing. That was the strangest part. 3 years ago, reading these files had felt like swallowing glass. Each new piece of evidence had been a fresh wound. But now it was just data, information. Ammunition I wouldn't use but kept anyway, because knowing I had it was its own kind of power. My phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. Dad, Mom wants to take me to dinner tomorrow night. Says it's important. Should I go? I stared at the message. Tomorrow night, the night before the hearing. Of course, Caroline wanted to see Ethan. Probably wanted to explain her side, to make sure he understood that she wasn't abandoning him, that she'd still be his mother, even if she wasn't my wife. I typed back, "Your choice, buddy. I won't be mad either way." His response came quickly. "Will it be weird if I say no? Maybe a little. But if you're not comfortable, you don't have to go." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, I'll go. But can we do something after? Just us? Absolutely. Movie? Dinner? Your pick. Arcade. I need to shoot some things. I smiled despite everything. Fair enough. It's a date. After I left the storage unit, I drove to my office. It was late afternoon, the sun beginning its descent toward the horizon, painting the glass towers of the financial district in shades of amber and gold. Beautiful and temporary, like everything else. My partners were in the conference room when I arrived. Marcus, Jennifer, and David. Not my brother David, but David Chen, the third partner in Tech Venture Capital. They'd called an emergency meeting. I knew what it was about before I even sat down. "We need to talk about the divorce," Marcus Lee said, without preamble. He was the oldest of us, 56, with steel gray hair and the kind of weathered face that came from decades in high-stakes business. Caroline's getting half the fund. That gives her significant say in how we operate. It does, I agreed. That's a problem, Jennifer Kim added. She was 42, brilliant, ruthless, when she needed to be. Caroline doesn't know anything about venture capital. She doesn't know tech. She doesn't know startups. And she's going to own half of this company. 25%, I corrected. I own 50%. She's getting half of my 50, which is 25% overall. Still enough to cause problems, David Chen said. He was my age, had been my first investor when I started Tech Venture. She could block deals, demand board seats, make our lives hell just because she can. I leaned back in my chair, looked at the 3 of them, these people I'd worked with for over a decade, who trusted me with their money, their careers, their futures. They deserved the truth, or at least part of it. "Let me ask you something," I said. "How much do you think Tech Venture is actually worth right now?" Marcus frowned. "On paper, about 40 million. We have 12 active portfolio companies, 3 of which are performing exceptionally well. Why? Because on paper isn't the same as in reality. Marcus, pull up the Q3 report. The real one, not the one we show investors." He did, pulling his laptop closer, fingers flying across the keyboard. Then his expression changed. "These numbers are accurate," I finished. "We've had 3 companies fail completely in the past year. 2 more are on life support. The ones that are performing well, they're overvalued. The market's going to correct, and when it does, their valuations will drop by at least 40%. Jennifer was looking at the screen now, too, her face growing pale. "Marcus, what did you do?" "I positioned us for the divorce," I said calmly. "For the past 2 years, every decision I've made, every investment we've pursued, has been designed to look good on paper, while actually reducing our real value. Caroline's getting half of a sinking ship, and when she realizes it, when she tries to exercise her ownership rights, she's going to find that there's nothing left to own. Silence. Then David Chen started to laugh. A low, incredulous sound that built until he was shaking his head in disbelief. You've been sabotaging our own fund to screw over your wife in the divorce. Not sabotaging, restructuring. Everything I did was legally defensible. We made risky bets that didn't pay off. We invested in companies that failed. It happens in venture capital. No one can prove I did it intentionally. But you did, Marcus said quietly. I did. Jesus Christ, Marcus. Jennifer closed the laptop. What happens to us? To the fund? The fund survives. We have enough cash reserves to weather the correction. And after the divorce is finalized, after Caroline realizes what she's inherited, I'll buy her out. Pennies on the dollar. Then we'll restructure properly, divest from the failing companies, pivot our strategy. Within 2 years, we'll be stronger than we've ever been. And if Caroline doesn't want to sell? David asked. She'll sell, because holding on to a quarter of a failing venture capital fund that requires constant capital injection and delivers no returns isn't sustainable. She'll cut her losses and walk away. And when she does, I'll be there to pick up the pieces. Marcus was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. This is the most calculated thing I've ever witnessed. You're willing to damage your own business, risk your professional reputation, hurt your partner's investments, all to make sure your wife suffers? My partner's investments are protected, I said. I made sure of that. You three own the other 50% of Tech Venture collectively. Your stakes are separate from mine. If the fund goes under, you can sue me for mismanagement, and you'll win. I've set aside funds specifically to cover those damages. But it won't come to that. Trust me. Trust you, Jennifer repeated flatly. Trust the man who's been systematically destroying his own company for 2 years without telling us. Yes. She looked at Marcus, then at David. Some silent communication passed between them. Then she turned back to me. Fine, we'll trust you. But Marcus, if this blows up, if we lose everything because you were too focused on revenge, you won't lose everything. You have my word. Your word, Marcus said, against 3 years of deception. Forgive me if I'm not entirely reassured. Then take this as reassurance. I have more to lose than any of you. If Tech Venture fails, I lose my reputation, my legacy, potentially my ability to work in venture capital again. I wouldn't risk that unless I was absolutely certain I could pull this off. And I am certain, because I've been planning this for 3 years, because I've covered every angle, because I never lose. The confidence in my voice seemed to settle something in the room. David nodded slowly. Jennifer's expression softened slightly. Marcus still looked skeptical, but he didn't argue further. The hearing's tomorrow, I said. After it's done, after Caroline officially becomes a part owner of Tech Venture, we'll have a follow-up meeting. I'll show you the full financial picture, the real strategy, everything. Until then, I need you to trust that I know what I'm doing. Do you? Marcus asked. Know what you're doing? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're burning down your life to watch your ex-wife choke on the smoke. I stood, walked to the window, looked out at the city spreading below us, all those lights beginning to twinkle on as darkness fell. Millions of people living their lives, pursuing their dreams, fighting their own battles. And here I was, fighting mine. I'm not burning down my life, I said quietly. I'm building a new one. But first, I have to demolish the old one. And yes, if Caroline gets caught in the rubble, if she chokes on the smoke, if she spends the next decade drowning in the consequences of her own greed, I'm okay with that. I turned back to face them. Tomorrow, I give her everything she asks for. Tomorrow, I sign away properties and businesses and investments. Tomorrow, I play the role of the defeated husband. And tomorrow night, I'll take my son to the arcade and start forgetting that Caroline ever existed. That's what I'm doing. That's the plan. And it's going to work. Later, Alone in my office, after my partners had left, I stood at the window and watched the city lights blur and sharpen as night deepened. In 12 hours, I'd be in court. In 12 hours, the machinery I'd set in motion 3 years ago would finally complete its revolution. In 12 hours, Caroline would get exactly what she wanted, and she'd have no idea what she'd actually received. My phone buzzed. A text from Caroline. "We should talk before tomorrow. There are details to discuss." I stared at the message, imagined her sitting in her penthouse, soon surrounded by all the beautiful things she'd collected, all the status symbols she'd insisted we display. Imagining her planning her future with Alex, dreaming about the life she'd build with my money. I typed back, "Everything's been handled by the lawyers. Nothing to discuss." Her response came quickly. "Marcus, don't be childish. We can be adults about this." Adults. The word almost made me laugh. There was nothing adult about what I'd been doing for 3 years. Nothing mature about the trap I'd built. Nothing civilized about the revenge I was executing. But she didn't need to know that. "See you at the hearing," I typed. "Have your lawyer present the terms. I'll sign them." No response. She was probably staring at her phone, confused by my acquiescence, suspicious of my cooperation. Smart woman, my wife, just not smart enough. I left the office, drove home, found Ethan in his room, headphones on, lost in whatever digital world he was building or exploring or destroying. "Hey," I said, knocking on the doorframe. He pulled off his headphones. "Hey, Dad, big day tomorrow." "Big day," I agreed. "You okay? Are you?" "I will be." He studied my face for a moment. "You look calm, like weirdly calm. Shouldn't you be freaking out or something? You're giving Mom basically everything tomorrow." "I'm giving her exactly what she asked for, which is everything, which is exactly what she deserves." He tilted his head, and I saw my father in that gesture, the same questioning look, the same sharp intelligence working through a problem. "There's something you're not telling me." "There's a lot I'm not telling you. But you'll tell me eventually?" "Eventually," I promised. "When it's time. When you're ready." "I'm 14, Dad. Not a kid." "I know. But some things need to happen in the right order. Trust me?" He smiled. "Always." That night, I slept better than I had in 3 years. Tomorrow, the dominoes would fall. Tomorrow, Carolyn would celebrate a victory that didn't exist. Tomorrow, everything would change. And I was ready. The courthouse was built in the 1,920 seconds, all marble and brass, and that particular kind of institutional grandeur that's meant to remind you that the law is older and more permanent than any individual life. I'd been here before, years ago, for a patent dispute that had cost me 6 months and $200,000, but had ultimately secured the intellectual property that became the foundation of my first successful startup. Walking up those same steps on the morning of my divorce hearing felt different, heavier, more final. Paul met me at the entrance, his briefcase in one hand, coffee in the other. He looked like he hadn't slept well. Neither had I, despite what I'd told myself last night. 3 years of planning didn't make this moment any less surreal. "Ready?" he asked. "As I'll ever be." "Marcus, there's still time to reconsider. We can ask for a continuance. Review the..." "Paul," I put a hand on his shoulder. "I'm ready. Let's do this." We walked through security, our shoes squeaking on the polished floors, past courtrooms where other people's lives were being dismantled and rearranged by judges and lawyers and the grinding machinery of legal process. Family court was on the 3rd floor, room 312. We took the elevator in silence. Caroline was already there when we arrived, standing outside the courtroom with Martin Rothschild. Her lawyer was exactly what you'd expect from someone with his reputation, 60, silver-haired, wearing a suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. He had the look of a man who'd never lost a case he cared about winning. Caroline looked radiant. There was no other word for it. She wore a navy suit that was professional but expensive. Her hair styled in soft waves, minimal jewelry, her wedding ring notably absent. She'd dressed for victory, for the cameras that might be waiting outside, for the moment she could tell her friends that she'd walked away from her marriage with everything she wanted. When she saw me, something flickered across her face. Not quite guilt, more like a calculation, being run and completed. She'd been worried I'd fight, that I'd make this ugly. And now, seeing me calm and cooperative, she was reassessing her strategy for a battle that wasn't going to happen. "Marcus," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "Caroline." Rothschild stepped forward, extending his hand. "Mr. Steele, I'm hoping we can keep this civilized." I shook his hand. His grip was firm, professional, with just enough pressure to remind me he was in control, or thought he was. "That's the plan," I said. "Good. My client has no interest in a prolonged conflict. We've submitted our proposed asset division. Your attorney has reviewed it. If you're amenable to the terms, we can have this finalized today." "I'm amenable." Something shifted in Rothschild's expression. A lawyer who'd prepared for war being handed a surrender instead. He glanced at Paul, looking for the catch, the hidden angle. Paul just shrugged slightly, his face carefully blank. "Well then," Rothschild said slowly, "this should be straightforward." The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected. Rows of wooden benches, a judge's bench that seemed designed to loom over everyone else, fluorescent lights that turned everything slightly sickly. Judge Patricia Morrison presided over family court in this district. I'd researched her thoroughly. 63 years old, appointed 15 years ago, with a reputation for fairness and a low tolerance for theatrics. She entered through a door behind the bench, and we all stood. "Please be seated," she said, settling into her chair and opening a file folder. "We're here for the divorce proceedings of Steele versus Steele. I've reviewed the preliminary filings. This is listed as uncontested?" "Yes, Your Honor," Rothschild said, standing. "My client and Mr. Steele have reached an agreement regarding asset division and custody arrangements. We're here simply to formalize the terms." Judge Morrison looked at me. "Mr. Steele, you're aware you have the right to contest these proceedings? That you can challenge the proposed division if you feel it's unfair?" "I'm aware, Your Honor." "And you're choosing not to contest?" "I am." She studied me for a moment, and I had the distinct impression she'd seen this before. Men who gave up rather than fight. Men who walked away from everything because the war wasn't worth the cost. I wondered what she saw in my face. Defeat? Resignation? Or something else entirely? "Very well," she said. "Mr. Rothschild, please present the terms." What followed was a recitation of everything I was giving away. Rothschild stood and read from his documents in the practiced cadence of a man who'd done this hundreds of times. The Blackwood estate, valued at $42 million. The Malibu property, $18 million. The Aspen Lodge, $12 million. The Manhattan apartment, $9 million. Caroline sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap, her expression serene. She'd won. She knew it. Everyone in the room knew it. "The vehicle collection," Rothschild continued, "including a 2023 Bentley Continental GT, a 2022 Range Rover Sport, a 2021 Tesla Model S, and a vintage 1967 Porsche 911. Combined value, approximately $800,000. Judge Morrison was making notes, her pen scratching across paper. "The art collection, valued at $3 million. The wine cellar, valued at $1.5 million. Jewelry and personal effects, approximately $2 million. Half of the stock portfolio, currently valued at $30 million, for a total of $15 million to Mrs. Steele." I watched Caroline as Rothschild spoke, watched her shoulders straighten slightly with each item listed, watched the corner of her mouth curve upward in what might have been satisfaction or might have been triumph or might have been relief that this was actually happening. And finally, Rothschild said, 25% ownership of Tech Venture Capital, currently valued at $10 million, based on Mrs. Steele's 50% stake in Mr. Steele's 50% ownership of the fund. Paul shifted beside me. That valuation, $10 million for Caroline's share, was based on the paperwork we'd submitted. The paperwork that listed Tech Venture at $40 million total. The paperwork that was, technically, accurate if you didn't look too closely at the underlying assets. Judge Morrison finished her notes. That's a substantial settlement. Mr. Steele, you understand what you're agreeing to? The total value of assets being transferred to your wife exceeds $150 million. I understand, Your Honor. And you're comfortable with this arrangement? I am. She looked at me for a long moment, then at Caroline, then back at her papers. What about custody of the minor child? Ethan Steele will reside primarily with his father, Rothschild said. Mrs. Steele will have visitation rights as agreed upon by both parties, but primary physical and legal custody will be with Mr. Steele. Mrs. Steele, you're comfortable with this arrangement? Judge Morrison asked. Caroline stood. Yes, Your Honor. Ethan and his father have always been very close. I think it's in his best interest to remain with Marcus. The judge made another note. And there are no other contested issues? No disputes regarding debts, obligations, future earnings? No, Your Honor, Rothschild said. Very well. I'm going to ask both parties to approach the bench. Caroline and I stood simultaneously, walked to the front of the courtroom. I could smell her perfume Hermes, the one she'd worn since I'd known her. Strange how some details remained sharp, while others had already started to blur. Judge Morrison looked at both of us. I want to be very clear. Once I sign these documents, this agreement becomes legally binding. There will be no going back, no revisions, no claims that you didn't understand the terms. Mr. Steele, you're giving up significant assets. Are you absolutely certain this is what you want? It is, Your Honor. Mrs. Steele, you understand that accepting these terms means you cannot come back later and ask for more? I understand, Your Honor. The judge picked up her pen, signed the first document, then the second, then a third. Each signature felt like a door closing. Each scratch of pen on paper was a piece of my old life being sealed away, archived, rendered into legal history. Congratulations, Judge Morrison said, though her tone suggested she thought there was nothing to congratulate. You're divorced. The asset transfers will be processed over the next 30 days. Mr. Rothschild will coordinate with Mr. Fletcher regarding the details. And just like that, it was done. 12 years of marriage dissolved in less than an hour. We filed out of the courtroom in silence. In the hallway, Caroline turned to me. For a moment, just a moment, something human flickered across her face. Maybe regret, maybe nostalgia, maybe just the acknowledgement that this was real, that we were actually doing this, that there was no going back. Marcus, she said quietly, I know this wasn't easy. Thank you for not making it harder. I looked at her, this woman I'd loved, this woman I'd built a life with, this woman who'd betrayed me and was now walking away with what she thought was my empire. I hope you get everything you deserve, Caroline. She smiled, actually smiled. Thank you. I hope you find happiness too. Real happiness. The kind we never quite managed to give each other. Rothschild was talking to Paul a few feet away, probably discussing transfer timelines and documentation. Caroline glanced at them, then back at me. I should go, she said. Alex is waiting. We're going to celebrate. Start planning our future. Of course she was. Of course Alex was waiting. 3 years of sneaking around, and now they could finally be public, finally be together without hiding, finally build the life they wanted with my money. Enjoy it, I said. She touched my arm briefly, a gesture that might have been affection or might have been habit, and then she was walking away, her heels clicking on the marble, Rothschild following behind her, both of them probably already discussing how to liquidate assets and transfer funds. Paul approached me, his expression unreadable. It's done. It's done. I agreed. You okay? I'm perfect. We walked toward the elevators. Behind us, I heard Rothschild's voice, slightly raised. Wait, Caroline. There's something in the property documents I need to clarify. I pressed the elevator button. Didn't turn around. Marcus, Paul said quietly, when exactly were you planning to tell her about the mortgages? I wasn't planning to tell her at all. That's what lawyers are for. Discovery, due diligence, reading the fine print. The elevator arrived. We stepped in. Just before the doors closed, I saw Rothschild pull out his phone, his expression shifting from confused to concerned. Saw Caroline turn back toward him, her smile fading. Saw the first crack in her victory. "How long before he figures it out?" Paul asked as we descended. "The mortgages? He probably already has. That's basic due diligence. But the full scope of it, the overvaluations, the failing investments, the actual state of tech venture, that'll take him a few days. Maybe a week if he's thorough. And when he tells Caroline, then she'll realize what she's actually won." The elevator reached the ground floor. The doors opened onto the marble lobby where other people were arriving for other hearings, other divorces, other dismantlings of lives that had stopped working. "You really did it," Paul said, something like awe in his voice. "You actually pulled it off." "Not yet. The dominoes are falling, but they haven't all fallen. Give it time." We walked out into the sunlight. It was a beautiful day, unseasonably warm, with a brilliant blue sky that seemed to mock the institutional grimness of the courthouse. Across the street, I saw a news van. A reporter I vaguely recognized. Caroline must have tipped them off. Of course she had. She'd want this documented. The moment she won, the moment she walked away from her marriage with one of the largest divorce settlements in the city's history. "Mr. Steele." The reporter was crossing the street, camera operator in tow. "Mr. Steele, can we ask you a few questions about the settlement?" Paul stepped forward, ready to deflect, but I put a hand on his arm. "It's fine," I said. The reporter reached us, slightly out of breath. "Mr. Steele, sources say you agreed to one of the largest divorce settlements in state history, over $150 million. Can you comment on that?" I looked directly at the camera. Thought about Caroline watching this later, thinking I was going to say something bitter or angry or defensive. Thought about her celebrating with Alex, toasting to their future, planning their life together. "I gave my ex-wife exactly what she asked for," I said calmly. "Every property, every asset, every investment she wanted. I hope it brings her everything she deserves." "Some people are calling this the most expensive divorce in the city's history. Do you regret the settlement?" "Not at all. My son is healthy and with me. I have my freedom. Everything else is just money, and money can always be replaced." "Your ex-wife declined to comment, but her attorney said she's grateful for your cooperation. Do you have any message for her?" I smiled. The kind of smile that looked gracious on camera, but meant something entirely different to anyone who knew the whole story. Just that I wish her all the best with her new life. I hope she enjoys every single thing she's receiving. Every property, every investment, every penny. She earned it. The reporter clearly expected more anger, bitterness, something that would make good television. When it didn't come, she thanked me and moved on, probably hoping to catch Caroline as she exited. Paul and I walked to the parking garage in silence. When we reached his car, he turned to me. "That was cold," he said. "She earned it. You know she's going to realize eventually that she didn't earn anything, that she inherited a disaster, that every asset she demanded is going to become a burden she can't escape." I opened my car door. "Yes, Paul. I know. That's the point." "And you're okay with that? With what's about to happen to her?" I thought about the question. Really thought about it. Thought about Caroline sitting in some restaurant right now with Alex, champagne in hand, celebrating a victory that didn't exist. Thought about the moment in a few weeks when the reality would start to sink in. The mortgage bills, the property taxes, the maintenance costs, the investment statements showing losses, the business that was bleeding money. Thought about her realizing that she'd won exactly nothing. "Yeah," I said finally. "I'm okay with it." I drove home slowly, taking the long route, letting the reality of what had just happened settle over me. I was divorced. Actually divorced. After 3 years of planning and preparing and positioning, it was done. Caroline was no longer my wife. The papers were signed. The transfer was in motion, and she had no idea what was coming. My phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. "How'd it go?" "It's done. Officially divorced. How do you feel? I thought about that. How did I feel? Not victorious. Not yet. Not angry anymore. Not sad. Exactly. Just clear. Like I'd been walking through fog for years, and suddenly the air was clean again. Free. I typed back. I feel free. Good. Still on for the arcade tonight? Absolutely. Pick you up at 6. Cool. Dad? Yeah. Love you. I sat in my car, in the parking garage, staring at those 2 words. Love you. Uncomplicated. Unconditional. The only relationship in my life that had never required strategy or planning or protection. Love you too, buddy. That evening, true to my promise, I took Ethan to the arcade. We spent 3 hours shooting zombies and racing virtual cars and competing for high scores on games that probably would have seemed ridiculous to anyone watching. But Ethan laughed, really laughed. The kind of uninhibited joy that teenagers rarely show their parents, and I remembered why I'd done all of this. Not for revenge, exactly. Not even for justice. For this. For the freedom to focus on what mattered. For the ability to build a new life without the weight of betrayal and lies and a marriage that had died years before anyone acknowledged it. We were eating pizza in the arcade's restaurant. Greasy, terrible, exactly what we wanted when Ethan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned, then looked at me. It's Mom. She wants to talk. Want privacy? Nah, I don't have anything to hide. He answered. Put it on speaker. Hi, Mom. Ethan, honey, how are you? Caroline's voice was strained, different than it had been this morning. The confidence was gone, replaced by something tighter, more uncertain. I'm good. At the arcade with Dad. That's nice. Listen, I need to ask you something. Did your father ever did he ever say anything about the properties? About money problems? Ethan looked at me. I shook my head slightly. No, Ethan said. Why? No reason. Just some paperwork that doesn't make sense. I'm sure it's nothing. My lawyer is looking into it. Okay. Are you happy, Ethan? Living with your father? Because you know you can change your mind, right? You can come live with me. And I'm happy, Mom. Really happy. A long pause. Then, okay. That's good. That's all that matters. I'll call you later this week. Okay? We'll have dinner. Sure, Mom. After she hung up, Ethan set down his phone. She sounded weird. She's probably just processing everything. Divorce is hard. Even when you get everything you wanted, I looked at my son. 14 years old, and already understanding that getting what you want isn't the same as winning. Especially then, I said. Later that night, alone in my study, I got an email from Paul. Rothschild called. He's done his due diligence on the properties. Found the mortgages. He's asking for a meeting. Wants to discuss irregularities in the asset disclosure. What should I tell him? I smiled at my computer screen. Typed back, tell him everything disclosed was accurate and verified. Tell him if he has concerns about the assets his client demanded, he should have done proper due diligence before agreeing to the terms. Tell him the documents are signed and the deal is done. And Paul, tell him to have a nice day. Outside my window, the city lights sparkled in the darkness. Somewhere out there, Caroline was beginning to understand. Her lawyer was explaining about mortgages and obligations and the difference between nominal value and actual equity. And slowly, carefully, inevitably, the trap I'd built was closing around her. The dominoes were falling, and I was free. The unraveling began exactly 17 days after the divorce was finalized. I know because I marked it on my calendar, not out of cruelty, but out of curiosity. How long would it take? How long before Caroline understood what she'd actually received? I'd estimated 3 weeks. I'd been close. The first sign came via email. Not to me directly, but to Paul, who forwarded it with a single word in the subject line. Beginning. The email was from Martin Rothschild, and even through the professional language, I could feel the barely controlled panic. Mr. Fletcher, upon further review of the asset transfers, several concerning discrepancies have emerged. The Blackwood estate, which was valued at $42 million in the settlement documents, carries a mortgage of $15 million that was not initially disclosed. Similarly, the Malibu property, $18, has an $8 million outstanding loan. The Aspen Lodge, $12 million, carries $5 million in debt. And the Manhattan apartment, $9, has $7 million in liens. These mortgages represent $35 million in undisclosed debt that my client has now inherited. This substantially changes the nature of the settlement and may constitute fraud. We demand an immediate meeting to discuss remediation. Additionally, preliminary analysis of the tech venture capital portfolio raises questions about the stated valuation. Several of the fund's portfolio companies appear to be significantly overvalued or non-performing. We are conducting a full audit and reserve the right to pursue legal action if fraud is discovered. Please respond within 48 hours. Regards, Martin Rothschild. I read it twice. Then I poured myself a scotch, even though it was only 2 in the afternoon. Not to celebrate, not yet, but to mark the moment. The moment when Caroline's victory started transforming into something else entirely. Paul called 5 minutes later. He's threatening legal action. Let him. I swirled the scotch, watched the light catch in the amber liquid. Every mortgage was properly documented. Every loan had legitimate business purposes. Every valuation was accurate at the time of settlement. He's a good lawyer. He knows he doesn't have a case. Marcus, he's not wrong to be upset. $35 million in debt is substantial. And if Tech Venture is really worth less than we stated, it's worth exactly what we stated, based on paper valuations at the time of the hearing. If those companies have declined in value since then, that's market forces, not fraud. Rothschild knows that. This email isn't a legal threat. It's a fishing expedition. He's hoping we'll panic and offer a settlement. Will we? No. Then what do? We respond professionally. We provide documentation for every claim we made. We show him that everything was disclosed, everything was legal, everything was exactly what it appeared to be. And then we wait for him to realize that his client asked for everything without bothering to understand what everything actually meant. I could hear Paul breathing on the other end of the line. Then, you're really going to let this play out? You're not going to try to fix it? Fix what? I gave Caroline exactly what she demanded. If what she demanded turns out to be less valuable than she thought, that's not my problem. That's her lawyer's problem for not doing proper due diligence. After we hung up, I sat in my study for a long time, thinking about Caroline, wondering what she was doing right now. Was she in the Blackwood estate, walking through rooms that were technically hers but felt increasingly like albatrosses around her neck? Was she meeting with Rothschild, listening to him explain about debt-to-equity ratios and maintenance costs and the difference between nominal value and real value? Was she beginning to understand? My phone buzzed. David, my brother, not my business partner. Have you talked to Jennifer recently? He asked without preamble. Not in a few days. Why? She ran into Caroline at that cafe on Lexington, the one with the overpriced lattes. Said Caroline looked stressed. I walked to the window. Outside, the gardeners were still maintaining the grounds of the penthouse complex, still trimming hedges and planting flowers and keeping everything looking perfect even though Caroline didn't live here anymore. I'd have to cancel that service. One less expense. Stressed how? Distracted, pale. Jennifer said she tried to say hello, and Caroline barely acknowledged her. Just grabbed her coffee and left. That's not like her. Caroline never misses an opportunity to network. Maybe she's just busy, moving into a new phase of her life. Or maybe, David said carefully, she's starting to realize what you did. I said nothing. Marcus, I'm not judging. What you pulled off is incredible. Brilliant, even. But Jennifer's worried. She thinks when Caroline figures it all out, when she realizes the full scope of what you did, what I did, was give her exactly what she asked for. You gave her a financial nightmare disguised as a fortune. And when she understands that, she's going to be angry. Really angry. Jennifer thinks she might retaliate. Try to turn people against you, damage your reputation, maybe even try to hurt Ethan by, she won't touch Ethan. My voice went cold. That's a line she won't cross. I hope you're right. But Marcus, maybe prepare for some fallout, because this isn't going to stay quiet forever. After David hung up, I made a decision. I called Thomas Brennan, the private investigator who'd spent 3 years documenting Caroline's affair, who'd compiled the evidence I'd never used in court, the evidence that sat in a storage unit, waiting. Thomas, I need you to do something for me. Name it. I need you to monitor Caroline. Not invasive surveillance, just basic observation. Where she goes, who she sees, whether she's planning anything. Can you do that? Still have her patterns in my system. Easy work. But Marcus, why now? The divorce is done. She's not your problem anymore. Call it insurance. I want to know if she starts planning something that could affect Ethan. Fair enough. I'll start tomorrow. Daily reports, okay? Perfect. That evening, I picked Ethan up from school. He slid into the passenger seat with his backpack, his hair slightly disheveled, his expression thoughtful. Mom texted me today, he said as I pulled out of the parking lot. Yeah? What'd she say? She wants to have dinner this weekend. Says she needs to talk to me about something important. He was staring out the window, watching the city slide past. Think it's about the divorce? Probably. She's still your mother, Ethan. She's going to want to maintain a relationship with you. I know. It's just... He trailed off. Just what? She sounds different. In her texts, more. I don't know. Desperate? Like she's trying really hard to sound normal, but it's not working. Out of the mouths of perceptive 14-year-olds. People go through changes during divorce. Give her time. Are you going through changes? I glanced at him. What do you think? He considered this. You seem happier, like genuinely happier. You smile more. You don't have that look you used to get when you came home and Mom was there. What look? The look, like you were preparing for a battle. Like you had to put on armor just to walk through your own front door. He turned to face me. You don't have that look anymore. Smart kid. Too smart. I feel lighter, I admitted. Like I've been carrying something heavy for a long time, and I finally got to put it down. Good. You deserve to be happy, Dad. We drove in comfortable silence for a while. Then Ethan said, Can I ask you something? And you have to be honest. Always. Did you screw Mom over in the divorce? I almost drove off the road. What? I'm not stupid, Dad. She got everything she asked for, but she seems miserable. Her lawyer keeps calling. She's stressed all the time. And you're acting like a guy who just won the lottery. So either you're just really good at moving on, or something else is going on. I pulled over, parked on a side street where we could talk without me navigating traffic. Turned to face my son, who was looking at me with those dark, serious eyes that missed nothing. The truth? I said. The truth. Yes, I screwed her over, but I did it legally. I gave her exactly what she demanded, without bothering to explain what she was actually getting. The properties have massive mortgages. The investments are overvalued. The business is failing. She asked for my empire, and I gave her the ruins of one. And no, I don't feel guilty about it. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Because she cheated on you. It wasn't a question. How did you... I'm not blind, Dad. Or deaf. I heard her on the phone sometimes. Late at night, when she thought everyone was asleep, talking to someone named Alex, saying things that, things that mothers shouldn't say to people who aren't their husbands. I felt something crack in my chest. Ethan, I'm sorry. You shouldn't have had to. I'm not sorry, he said it firmly. She made her choices, and you made yours. She chose to cheat and then demand everything in the divorce. You chose to let her have it and watch her choke on it. Honestly, I think you were nicer than I would have been. You're 14. You shouldn't be thinking about revenge. I'm 14, not stupid. And I'm not thinking about revenge. I'm thinking about justice. There's a difference. He looked at me seriously. She hurt you, Dad. For years. And she didn't care. So, yeah, I'm glad you protected yourself. I'm glad you didn't just roll over and let her win. And I'm glad we're here. Just us. without all the fake happy family bullshit. I pulled him into a hug, awkward because of the seatbelts and the confined space of the car, but necessary. "When did you get so wise?" "I had a good teacher," he said, his voice muffled against my shoulder. We sat like that for a moment. Then Ethan pulled back. "So what happens now? When Mom figures out what you did?" "I don't know. Maybe she tries to sue. Maybe she just accepts it and moves on. Maybe she sells everything and walks away with whatever she can get." "And if she comes after you, tries to make your life difficult?" "Then I have 3 years of documentation proving she had an affair. Evidence I never used in the divorce because I didn't need to. But if she wants to make things ugly, if she wants to fight..." I met his eyes. "I'll win. Because I always win." He grinned. "That's kind of badass, Dad." Language. "Sorry. That's kind of impressively strategic, Dad." We drove home, ordered pizza, watched a movie neither of us really paid attention to. And for the first time in 3 years, I felt like I was actually living in my own life instead of executing a plan in someone else's. The next morning, I got the first call from Caroline. I was in my home office, reviewing quarterly reports from Tech Ventures portfolio companies, the real reports, not the ones Caroline's lawyer would be seeing when my phone rang. Her name on the screen felt like a ghost calling from the past. I almost didn't answer. Almost let it go to voicemail. But curiosity won. "Caroline, we need to talk." Her voice was tight, controlled, but I could hear the stress underneath, the realization beginning to crystallize. I'm listening. "The properties, the mortgages. Marcus, why didn't you tell me?" "Tell you what?" "That they were leveraged. That there's $35 million in debt attached to what you gave me." It was all in the documentation, Caroline. Every mortgage, every loan, every lien. Your lawyer had access to all of it. If he didn't review it thoroughly. "Don't." She cut me off. "Don't act like this was a documentation issue. You deliberately made it seem like I was getting $80 million in real estate when I'm actually getting $50 million in equity and $35 million in debt. That's deceptive, Marcus." "That's business. You asked for the properties. I gave you the properties. The fact that those properties have mortgages doesn't change that I gave you what you asked for. The maintenance costs alone are over $200,000 a month. Do you have any idea what that means?" "I do, actually. I've been paying those costs for years. Now you get to." Silence. I could hear her breathing. Could picture her in whatever room she was in, probably the Blackwood estate, probably in the study that overlooked the lake, probably surrounded by paperwork that was explaining in stark financial terms what she'd actually won. "This is revenge," she said finally. "This whole thing. You've been planning this, trapping me. I gave you what you wanted. You gave me a poison pill wrapped in gold paper. Interesting metaphor. But no, I gave you exactly what you demanded. Every property, every asset, every investment. If those turn out to be less valuable than you assumed, that's not deception. That's due diligence you didn't do. Martin says we can sue. Says this might constitute fraud. Martin is a good lawyer, which means he knows that's not true. Everything was disclosed, everything was documented, everything was legal. You don't have a case, Caroline. You have buyer's remorse. There's a difference." More silence. Then, quieter. "Why? Why did you do this?" And there it was. The question I'd been waiting for. The question that had lived in the center of my chest for 3 years, waiting for this exact moment to be asked. "You really want to know?" I asked. "Yes." 3 years ago, I found text messages on your phone. Messages to Alex. Messages that made it very clear you were having an affair. I could have confronted you then, could have ended the marriage, could have used that evidence to protect myself in the divorce. But I didn't. Instead, I took screenshots, hired a private investigator, and spent 3 years watching you lie to me while I systematically repositioned every asset we had. The sound she made wasn't quite a gasp, more like air being punched out of lungs. "I documented everything," I continued. "Every text, every call, every hotel room, every lie you told about where you were going and who you were with. I have 3 years of evidence, Caroline. Evidence I never used because I didn't need to, because you walked into my trap willingly. You asked for everything, and I gave it to you. And now you get to live with the consequences. You've known for 3 years." Her voice was barely a whisper. 3 years. Every morning I woke up next to you. Every night I said goodnight. Every conversation about our day, our plans, our future. 3 years of knowing exactly what you were doing and choosing to wait. Choosing to plan. Choosing to give you exactly what you deserved. Marcus, Don't apologize. Don't try to explain. Don't make excuses. We're divorced. You got what you wanted. I got what I wanted. We're done. What about Ethan? And there was the line. The boundary. The one thing that could still make me feel something other than cold satisfaction. Ethan is fine, I said. And he stays fine. You can have a relationship with him if he wants that. But you will not use him as a weapon. You will not try to turn him against me. You will not bring your drama into his life. Are we clear? Crystal. Good. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do. Enjoy your properties, Caroline. Every single square foot of them. I hung up, sat in my office, staring at the phone, feeling the adrenaline coursing through my veins. That conversation had been building for 3 years. 3 years of swallowed words, suppressed anger, calculated silence. And now it was done, said, over. She knew, and knowing changed nothing. The trap had already closed. My phone buzzed. A text from Thomas. Subject: had lunch with Alex Monroe today. Observed heated discussion. Subject appeared distressed. Monroe appeared frustrated. Left separately. Want me to continue surveillance? I typed back, yes. Daily reports. Then I opened my laptop and began drafting a memo to my tech venture partners. Time to start the next phase. Time to begin rebuilding what I'd deliberately torn down. Time to transform the ruins Caroline had inherited into something new, something stronger, something that was entirely mine. Outside my window, the sun was setting over the city. Gold and crimson bleeding into purple, beautiful and temporary, like everything else. Caroline had asked why I'd done this. The answer was simple. Because she'd thought she could betray me and win. And I'd needed to prove her wrong. Not in court. Not in public. Not with a dramatic confrontation or a bitter fight. But quietly, methodically, perfectly, by giving her exactly what she wanted and watching it destroy her. The dominoes were still falling, and I was finally free to start building something real. The reality of Caroline's situation hit the news exactly 23 days after our divorce was finalized. Not mainstream news, we weren't celebrities, despite Caroline's best efforts to cultivate a high society presence. But the business journals picked it up, the financial blogs, the society pages that track the wealthy in their dramas like sports scores. Tech mogul's ex-wife faces financial crisis despite record divorce settlement. I was having breakfast with Ethan when my phone started buzzing with notifications. Text messages from colleagues, emails from reporters, a voice message from David asking if I'd seen the article. Even my mother called, her voice tight with concern. "Marcus, darling, have you seen what they're writing?" "I've seen it, Mom. They're making you sound like a villain, like you deliberately deceived Caroline." I looked at Ethan across the table. He was pretending to focus on his cereal, but I could see his eyes flicking toward my phone, watching my face for reactions. "I gave Caroline what she asked for," I said calmly. "If the media wants to spin that into villainy, that's their choice." "But the comments, Marcus. People are saying terrible things, that you're cruel, that you're manipulative, that you destroyed her on purpose." "Mom." I kept my voice, gentle but firm. "I appreciate your concern. But this was always going to happen. Caroline's lawyer is leaking information to make her look sympathetic. It's a PR strategy. It doesn't change anything." After I hung up, Ethan finally looked at me directly. "Is it bad? What they're saying?" "Depends on your perspective. To some people, I'm a monster. To others, I'm someone who protected himself from a cheating spouse. The truth is probably somewhere in between. What's your perspective?" I set down my coffee. My perspective is that I'm sitting here having breakfast with my son in a home that's actually ours, without pretense or lies or betrayal hanging over our heads. Everything else is noise." He nodded slowly. "The kids at school are going to see this. Probably. You okay with that?" "I mean, it's not like they didn't already know my parents got divorced. This just gives them more details to gossip about." He shrugged, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. "I can handle it. If anyone gives you trouble—" "Dad, I know. Talk to you, or the counselor, or whatever. I've got this." He stood, grabbed his backpack. "Besides, half the kids at my school have divorced parents. I'm not exactly unique." After he left for school, I finally read the full article. It was in the Business Chronicle, written by a reporter named Sarah Chen who'd covered several of my startup exits over the years. The piece was surprisingly balanced, laying out the facts without too much editorializing, though the implications were clear enough. Marcus Steele, founder of tech venture capital, agreed to what initially appeared to be one of the largest divorce settlements in state history, transferring over $150 million in assets to his ex-wife, Caroline Steele. However, sources close to the situation reveal that many of these assets carry substantial debt, resulting in a net transfer significantly lower than initially reported. The Blackwood estate, valued at $42 million, carries a $15 million mortgage. Similar debt structures affect the other properties transferred in the settlement. Additionally, questions have emerged about the valuation of tech venture capital, where Mrs. Steele now owns 25% of the fund. This appears to be a case where proper due diligence wasn't conducted, says financial analyst Robert Morrison. The assets transferred were technically as described, but the net value was substantially lower than the gross figures suggested. Mrs. Steele's attorney, Martin Rothschild, declined to comment on whether legal action is being considered. The comment section was exactly what my mother had warned about. Half the readers thought I was a genius, half thought I was a sociopath. A few thought I was both. My phone rang. "Paul, have you seen it?" he asked. "Everyone's seen it. Rothschild's people leaked this. It's a pressure campaign. They want you to feel guilty enough to negotiate a settlement. Not going to work." "I know that. But Marcus, this changes things. Once this story gets traction, once other outlets pick it up, you're going to be the villain in a lot of people's eyes. Your business relationships could suffer. Potential investors might see you as untrustworthy. This could damage your reputation." I walked to my study window, looked out at the city, waking up. All those people starting their days, pursuing their ambitions, fighting their own battles. Somewhere out there, Caroline was reading the same article, probably coordinating with Rothschild about the next move, probably trying to figure out how to spin this to her advantage. "Paul, let me ask you something. In your professional opinion, did I do anything illegal?" "No." "Did I disclose all required information?" "Yes." "Did I commit fraud or deception in any legal sense?" A pause. "No. Everything was documented. Everything was disclosed. Caroline's lawyer had access to all the information he needed to properly evaluate the assets. The fact that he didn't look closely enough isn't your fault. Then my reputation will survive, because at the end of the day, I gave my ex-wife exactly what she demanded in a legally proper divorce settlement. If she didn't understand what she was demanding, that's not my problem. You're more pragmatic than I am. I'm more motivated than you are. This is my life, Paul. I spent 3 years planning for this exact scenario. A few negative comments in the business press aren't going to make me second-guess myself now." After we hung up, I did something I hadn't done in weeks. I opened my laptop, navigated to the encrypted server, and pulled up Thomas's latest surveillance reports. The most recent one was from yesterday. Subject met with attorney Rothschild for 3 hours, left visibly upset. Observed making multiple phone calls in parking garage, appeared distressed. Later met with A. Monroe at coffee shop. Discussion appeared tense. Monroe left after 20 minutes. Subject remained. Appeared to be crying. Financial observation. Subject attempted to use credit card at restaurant, card declined. Used different card. At gas station, Attempted ATM withdrawal transaction denied. Property observation. Maintenance crew at Blackwood Estate subject had heated phone conversation with property manager regarding unpaid invoices. I closed the report, leaned back in my chair, felt nothing. That was the strangest part. I'd expected to feel satisfaction, maybe even triumph. Instead, I just felt empty. Like I'd been holding my breath for 3 years, and now that I could finally exhale, I didn't remember how. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Alex Monroe. We need to talk. It's about Caroline." I stared at the message. Alex, the woman who'd been sleeping with my wife for 3 years, the woman who'd been planning a future with Caroline funded by my assets, the woman who was now, presumably, discovering that the fortune she'd thought they were inheriting was actually a financial nightmare. I shouldn't respond. The smart move was to ignore it, block the number, maintain my distance from the wreckage. But curiosity, or maybe something darker, made me type back, "I have nothing to say to you." The response came immediately. "But I have something to say to you about what Caroline is planning. You need to hear this." I hesitated. Then, "Fine. My office. Tomorrow at 2 p.m. Come alone." Agreed. That evening, Ethan came home from school quieter than usual. He went straight to his room without the usual debrief about his day. I gave him 20 minutes, then knocked on his door. "Come in. Come in." He was sitting at his desk, staring at his computer screen, but I could tell he wasn't really seeing it. "Rough day?" I asked. "Some kids were talking. About the article. About you and Mom." I sat on his bed. "What were they saying?" "Doesn't matter, Ethan." He turned to face me. His eyes were red, but he wasn't crying, just tired. Emotionally exhausted in a way that 14-year-olds shouldn't have to be. "They were saying you're a bad person, that you ruined Mom on purpose, that anyone who would do that to their ex-wife is basically a sociopath." He looked down at his hands. "I wanted to defend you, to tell them they didn't know the whole story, but I couldn't without explaining about the affair, and that felt like, I don't know, wrong. Minus his problem. Wrong." "It would be wrong," I said. "Your mother's mistakes aren't your burden to explain, but your actions are my burden to live with. People look at me differently now, like I'm the son of this cold, calculating guy who destroyed his ex-wife. And the thing is," he looked up at me, "you kind of are that guy. You did destroy her. On purpose. Methodically." The words hit harder than they should have. Maybe because they were true. Maybe because hearing them from my son, the one person whose opinion mattered more than anyone else's, made them real in a way the news articles hadn't. "Do you think I'm a bad person?" I asked quietly. He thought about it. Really thought about it. Not just giving me the answer he thought I wanted to hear, but considering the question seriously. "No," he finally said. "I think you're a hurt person who did a calculated thing to someone who hurt you. I don't think that makes you bad. But I don't think it makes you entirely good either. You're just human. Complicated human." That's a very mature perspective. "Yeah, well, I've had a lot of practice thinking about complicated things." He turned back to his computer. "I'm okay, Dad. Really. I just needed a minute to process. The kids at school will find something else to gossip about next week. It'll be fine." But I could see it wasn't fine. Could see the weight of this sitting on his shoulders, making him older than he should have to be. And for the first time since I'd started executing my plan, I felt something that might have been regret. Not for what I'd done to Caroline, she'd earned every bit of that, but for what it cost Ethan. For making him the son of a controversy, a headline, a cautionary tale about revenge and divorce. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Ethan's words, "You're just human, complicated human," and Alex's text about what Caroline is planning, and the article, and the comments, and the 3 years of careful planning that had led to this moment where I'd won exactly what I wanted and somehow still felt like I was standing in ruins. At 2 a.m., I gave up on sleep and went to my study, opened my laptop, started going through the tech venture files, looking at the real numbers, the actual state of the fund. It was worse than even I'd presented to Caroline's lawyer. 3 more portfolio companies had failed in the past month. The ones that remained were hemorrhaging cash. The total value of the fund was probably closer to $8 million than the $40 we'd claimed at the divorce hearing. Caroline owned 25% of that. $2 million on paper, maybe less in reality. And that $2 million was trapped in a failing fund that couldn't be easily liquidated, couldn't generate returns, couldn't be sold without taking massive losses. I'd built the perfect trap, and she'd walked into it willingly. So why did it feel so hollow? My phone buzzed. A text from David. Can't sleep either, huh? How did you know I was awake? Because I know you, and I know that look you get when you've won something, but you're not sure what you've actually won. Come over. Jennifer's here too. We're having a 2am sibling summit about your life choices. Despite everything, I smiled. Be there in 20. David's house was lit up when I arrived. I found my siblings in his kitchen, coffee brewing, pizza boxes open on the counter. Apparently Jennifer had brought provisions. Okay, Jennifer said as I walked in. Intervention part 2. Except this time we're not trying to stop you. We're trying to figure out if you're okay with what you've done. I poured myself coffee, took a slice of cold pizza. I'm fine. You're not fine, David said. The article came out today, and you've been completely silent. No statements, no comments, nothing. That's not like you. What do you want me to say? That I'm sorry? I'm not. No one's asking you to be sorry, Jennifer said. We're asking if you're happy. Because, Marcus, you won. You did exactly what you set out to do. Caroline is facing financial ruin. Her relationship with Alex is apparently falling apart. She's becoming a cautionary tale. You executed your revenge perfectly. So why do you look like someone who just lost instead of won? I sat down at David's kitchen table, the same table where we'd had our first intervention, where I'd explained my plan, where my family had decided to trust me. And now here we were again, except this time they were asking different questions. Ethan said something today, I began. He said, I'm not a bad person, but I'm not entirely good either. That I'm just human, complicated human. Wise kid, David observed. And I've been thinking about that. About what it means to be complicated. About whether winning at the cost of becoming someone your son sees as complicated is actually winning. You didn't become someone new, Jennifer said gently. You just became someone visible. The capacity for what you did, the planning, the calculation, the ruthlessness that was always in you, Caroline just gave you a reason to use it. That's not exactly comforting. It's not meant to be comforting. It's meant to be true. She moved closer, sat across from me. Marcus, you did a cold thing, a calculated thing. But you didn't do a wrong thing. Caroline cheated on you for 3 years. She planned to leave you and take everything you'd built. She used you, lied to you, betrayed you. And when she asked for everything in the divorce, you gave it to her. The fact that everything turned out to be less than she thought doesn't make you a villain. It makes you strategic. Ethan's dealing with kids at school, calling his father a sociopath. Ethan's dealing with kids at school, being kids at school. David countered. Give him some credit. He's tough. He understands what happened. And he's on your side. That's what matters. Is it? Is that what matters? That my 14-year-old son understands why his father destroyed his mother? Stop, Jennifer said firmly. Stop reframing this. You didn't destroy Caroline. She destroyed herself. She made choices to cheat, to lie, to demand everything. You just made sure those choices had consequences. That's not destruction. That's justice. We sat in silence for a moment. The coffee maker gurgled. Outside, the city slept, oblivious to our 2 a.m. existential crisis. You want to know what I think? David asked. Do I have a choice? I think you're struggling because for 3 years, you had a mission, a clear objective. Get through the divorce, execute the plan, watch Caroline realize what she'd done. And now, that mission is accomplished. The plan is complete, and you're left standing there wondering what comes next, wondering who you are when you're not plotting revenge. He wasn't wrong. So who am I? I asked quietly. You're a father, Jennifer said immediately. First and foremost, you're Ethan's dad. That's the most important thing. You're a businessman, David added. A damn good one. And now, you get to rebuild Tech Venture properly. Turn it into what it should have been all along. You're our brother, Jennifer finished. Complicated, calculating, occasionally ruthless, but ours. And we love you anyway. I felt something loosen in my chest. Some tension I'd been carrying for so long I'd forgotten it was there. Tomorrow, I said. Alex wants to meet with me. Says Caroline is planning something. Are you going to meet with her? David asked. I am. Why? Because I want to hear what she has to say. Because knowledge is power. And because I paused, trying to articulate something I barely understood myself. Because I want to look her in the eye. The woman who helped destroy my marriage. I want to see if she's suffering too. That's dark, Jennifer observed. Yeah? I agreed. It is. We stayed up until 4 a.m., talking about nothing and everything. About business and revenge and family and the complicated math of being human in a world that demanded simple answers. And by the time I drove home, the sun was beginning to rise, painting the city in shades of pink and gold. Beautiful and temporary, like everything else. Tomorrow, I'd meet with Alex. Tomorrow, I'd find out what Caroline was planning. Tomorrow, I'd take the next step in whatever came after revenge. But tonight, or this morning, technically I was just Marcus, complicated human, son and brother and father, winner of a battle that had left everyone damaged. And for now, that was enough. Alex Monroe arrived at my office exactly on time. I watched her from my window as she stepped out of a black Audi in the parking garage below. She was tall, moved with the confident grace of someone used to commanding attention. Even from 47 floors up, I could see why Caroline had been attracted to her. There was something magnetic about the way she carried herself, assured, deliberate, completely self-possessed. The woman who'd been sleeping with my wife for 3 years was about to walk into my office. I should have felt anger, rage, the urge to throw her out before she even opened her mouth. Instead, I felt something colder, curiosity, a clinical desire to understand the other variable in the equation that had been my marriage. My assistant buzzed me. Mr. Steele, there's a Miss Monroe here to see you. Send her in. I stayed at the window, watching the city, not turning around when I heard the door open. Let her come to me. Let her see the view that represented everything Caroline had thought she was getting: the power, the wealth, the empire. Mr. Steele. Her voice was lower than I'd expected, warmer, the kind of voice that could talk you into things you knew were bad ideas. I turned. Miss Monroe, please, sit. She crossed to one of the chairs facing my desk, but didn't sit immediately. Instead, she stood there, studying me, the same way I was studying her. Up close, she was striking rather than beautiful sharp cheekbones, intelligent gray eyes, an economy of movement that suggested someone who thought carefully before acting. Thank you for meeting with me, she said finally, sitting down. I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't. I moved to my desk, sat across from her. But you said this was about what Caroline is planning. That implies something I should be concerned about. You should be. She folded her hands in her lap, and I noticed she wore no jewelry. No rings, no bracelets, nothing ornamental. Everything about her was utilitarian, functional. The opposite of Caroline's elaborate accessories and careful styling. But before I tell you what I came here to say, I need to ask you something. The article in the Chronicle, the one about the divorce settlement, was that accurate? Which part? All of it. The mortgages, the debt, the overvalued investments. Did you really structure everything so that Caroline would inherit massive obligations disguised as assets? I gave Caroline exactly what she demanded. If what she demanded turned out to be less valuable than she assumed, that's not deception. That's her failure to do proper due diligence. Alex was quiet for a moment. Then, unexpectedly, she smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. More like the smile of someone recognizing a pattern they should have seen earlier. I underestimated you, she said. We both did. Caroline thought you were just another wealthy husband who'd roll over and give her what she wanted to avoid a fight. I thought you were too focused on your business to notice what was happening in your own marriage. We were both wrong. You were both arrogant, I corrected. There's a difference. Fair enough. She shifted in her chair. For what it's worth, I'm not here to apologize. What Caroline and I did the affair was wrong. We both knew it. But I'm not going to insult your intelligence by claiming we didn't mean for it to happen or that we feel terrible about it. We made choices. You made choices. Here we are. I found myself appreciating her directness. No tears, no excuses, no performance of regret. Just cold honesty. It was almost refreshing. So why are you here? Because Caroline is planning to destroy you, and I can't let her do it. I leaned back in my chair. Why not? She's your partner, your future. Why would you sabotage her? She was my partner. Past tense. Our relationship has been falling apart since she realized what you'd done. The financial pressure, the reality of what she's actually facing, it's changed her, made her desperate. And desperate people do dangerous things. What kind of dangerous things? Alex reached into her bag, pulled out her phone, unlocked it, and set it on my desk. Read this. It's a text conversation from 3 days ago. I picked up the phone. Read the exchange between Alex and Caroline. I found a journalist who's interested in Marcus's story, not just the divorce, everything. His business practices, his ethics, how he treats employees. We give them the right information. We can destroy his reputation. What information? And why would we do that? Because he deserves it. Because he humiliated me. Because I want him to lose everything, the way I'm losing everything. That's not justice, Caroline. That's revenge. He got revenge. Now it's my turn. By lying to journalists, by inventing scandals, by telling the truth about how he manipulated the divorce, how he deceived me, how he's been unethical in his business dealings. Has he been unethical in his business dealings? Does it matter? People believe what they read. We plant the seeds. They'll grow. I read it twice. Then I set the phone down and looked at Alex. She's planning a smear campaign. More than that. She's planning to invent stories, to approach employees, former business partners, anyone who might have a grudge, offer them money to speak to journalists about Marcus Steele's unethical practices. Build a narrative that you're not just a cold ex-husband, you're a corrupt businessman who's been hiding misconduct for years. None of that is true. That, I know. That's why I'm here. Alex picked up her phone, put it back in her bag. When Caroline and I started our relationship, she was unhappy, but she wasn't malicious. She wanted out of her marriage, wanted to start fresh, wanted a different life. I understood that. I supported it. But this? She gestured vaguely at the air between us. This isn't about wanting a different life. This is about wanting to hurt you, because she's hurting, and I can't be part of that. Why not? You were part of hurting me for 3 years. The words came out harsher than I'd intended. Alex flinched slightly, but she didn't look away. You're right, she said quietly. I was. And I can't undo that. But I can stop being part of it now. I can draw a line. What Caroline and I did was between adults who made choices. What she's planning to do, inventing scandals, destroying your professional reputation, potentially affecting your ability to do business, that's different. That's not romance gone wrong. That's calculated destruction. I stood, walked to the window, looked down at the city, where, somewhere, Caroline was sitting, in one of the properties I'd given her, planning how to burn down what was left of my life. When? I asked without turning around. When what? When is she planning to go to the press? Next week. She's meeting with a reporter from the Financial Times, someone who apparently has a reputation for taking down tech executives. She's going to paint herself as the victim and you as the villain. And Marcus? Alex's voice was serious. She's good at this. She's convincing. She'll cry at the right moments, show the right amount of wounded dignity. People will believe her. I thought about Ethan. About coming home to find him reading articles about his father being not just cold and calculating, but corrupt, criminal. About watching my son's opinion of me shift from complicated human to something darker. What does she want? I asked. Money? A settlement? Is this an extortion attempt? No. She wants you to suffer. She wants to watch you lose clients, investors, partnerships. She wants your name to become toxic in the business community. She wants revenge for what you did to her. I gave her what she asked for, and she gave you what you deserved or thought you deserved. But Marcus, we're past the point of who's right and who's wrong. We're at the point where Caroline is willing to commit fraud, to lie to journalists, to destroy innocent people's lives just to hurt you. That's where I draw the line. I turned to face her. Why? Why is this your line? You helped her cheat for 3 years. Why stop her now? Alex stood, moved to the window beside me. We looked out at the city together, two people on opposite sides of a war neither of us had wanted, bound by the wreckage of my marriage. Because I fell in love with someone who was unhappy, she said quietly. Someone who felt trapped and wanted freedom. I understood that. I believed in that. But the woman planning this campaign? The one willing to lie and manipulate and destroy? I don't love that person. I don't even recognize her. She turned to look at me. And I won't help someone become a monster, even if they're becoming a monster because of something you did. Thoughtful of you. Mock me if you want, but I'm giving you information that could protect you. Information I don't have to give you. At considerable personal cost, Caroline will know I warned you. Our relationship will be over. So maybe save the sarcasm and just say, thank you. She was right. I was being an asshole because it was easier than acknowledging that this woman, this stranger who'd been intimate with my wife, was doing me a significant favor. Thank you, I said. Genuinely. I appreciate the warning. What are you going to do? I don't know yet, but I have a week to figure it out. Alex nodded, started toward the door, then stopped, turned back. Can I ask you something? And I want an honest answer. Depends on the question. When you found out about the affair, when you decided to do what you did instead of just divorcing her cleanly, was it worth it? The 3 years of planning, the elaborate trap, the revenge? Now that it's done, now that you've won, was it worth what it cost? I thought about that, really thought about it, about the 3 years of sleeping next to someone I knew was betraying me, about methodically dismantling my own empire to trap her, about Ethan dealing with the fallout, about standing here now, talking to my ex-wife's lover about her plans to destroy me. Ask me in a year, I said finally. Right now, I'm too close to it to know. Fair enough. She reached for the door handle. For what it's worth, I think you're both casualties of a marriage that should have ended years ago. Neither of you are villains. Neither of you are heroes. You're just two people who hurt each other in increasingly elaborate ways, and I hope, eventually, you both find a way to stop. After she left, I sat at my desk for a long time, staring at nothing, processing, planning, trying to figure out the next move in a game that was supposed to be over but apparently had several more rounds to go. My phone rang. Paul, we need to talk, he said. Rothschild just sent over a letter. They're threatening legal action for fraud in the asset transfer. It's bullshit. They know they don't have a case, but he's copying journalists on the correspondence. He's building a public narrative. I know. I just had a meeting with someone who gave me some intel. Caroline's planning to go to the press with a broader story, not just about the divorce, about alleged business misconduct. Paul was quiet for a moment. Then, Marcus, how much of your business conduct would survive aggressive journalistic scrutiny? All of it. I run a clean operation. But that doesn't matter. If she invents enough smoke, people will assume there's fire. So what do we do? I pulled out the file I'd been saving, the one from the storage unit, the one containing 3 years of documentation about Caroline's affair, her financial impropriety, her own plans for the divorce. We go nuclear, I said. If Caroline wants to play dirty, we show the world exactly who she is. We release the evidence of her affair. We show that she was siphoning money from our accounts. We demonstrate that she planned this divorce a year in advance while pretending everything was fine. We destroy her credibility before she can destroy mine. Marcus. Paul's voice was careful. That's mutually assured destruction. Yes, it would stop her, but it would also make you look vindictive. It would validate everyone who's calling you a sociopath. And most importantly, it would devastate Ethan. Do you want your son to see explicit details of his mother's affair plastered across the news? He was right. God damn it, he was right. Then what's the alternative? We take the high road. We prepare a statement about the divorce settlement factual, calm, demonstrating that everything was properly disclosed. We have our business partners vouch for your ethics. We build our own narrative, quietly, professionally, without dragging Caroline through the mud publicly. And we hope that when she goes to the press, when she makes her accusations, people see through them. Hope isn't a strategy, Paul. No, but sometimes it's all we have. Marcus, you won the divorce. Don't lose the war by becoming exactly what she's claiming you are. After I hung up, I called the one person whose opinion mattered more than anyone else's. Ethan answered on the second ring. Hey, Dad. What's up? Can you come to my office after school? There's something we need to talk about. Is everything okay? It will be. But I need to discuss something with you. Adult to adult. A pause. Okay. Serious voice engaged. I'll be there at 4. When Ethan arrived, I had coffee waiting for him. He'd started drinking it recently, a development Caroline would have forbidden, but I'd allowed because he was growing up, whether we liked it or not. He sat across from my desk, looking suddenly older in the afternoon light filtering through my office windows. So what's going on? He asked, getting straight to it. My son, never one for small talk. I told him everything. About Alex's visit, about Caroline's plans, about the choice I was facing, use the evidence and destroy Caroline's credibility, or take the high road and hope for the best. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. What do you want to do? He finally asked. Honestly, part of me wants to release everything. Show the world who she really is. Make sure she can't hurt me. And the other part? The other part knows that if I do that, you'll have to live with the fallout. Kids at school will know explicit details about your mother's affair. You'll see her humiliated publicly. And no matter what she's done, she's still your mother. Ethan took a sip of his coffee, set it down carefully, looked at me with those dark, serious eyes. Dad, can I be really honest? Always. I don't care what happens to Mom. I know I should. I know she's my mother, and I should want to protect her or whatever. But I don't. She made her choices. She hurt you. And now she's trying to hurt you again, instead of just accepting the consequences of what she did. He leaned forward. But you're right about one thing. I don't want to live through having her affair details in the news. Not because I care about protecting her, but because I don't want to be known as the kid whose mom's sexts got published. That's not about her. That's about me. So, you think I should take the high road? I think you should do what you need to do to protect yourself. But I also think, he paused, choosing his words carefully. I think you're better than this. Better than the revenge thing. You already won, Dad. You already proved you're smarter than her. Don't become someone worse just to prove it again. Out of the mouths of 14-year-olds. When did you get so wise? I asked. I had a good teacher. Even if he occasionally makes questionable decisions involving elaborate revenge schemes. I laughed. Actually laughed. The first real laugh I'd had in days. Okay, I said. We take the high road. We prepare our defense without attacking, and we trust that the truth will be enough. And if it's not, then we deal with that when it happens. But we deal with it without becoming people we can't recognize in the mirror. Ethan stood, started to leave, then turned back. Dad, for what it's worth, I'm proud of you. Not for what you did to Mom in the divorce, but for this. For choosing not to make things worse, just because you could. After he left, I sat in my office as the sun set over the city, turning the glass towers into pillars of fire. Tomorrow, I'd start preparing my defense. Tomorrow, I'd coordinate with Paul about managing the narrative. Tomorrow, I'd begin the next phase of whatever came after revenge. But tonight, I'd made a choice. Not to win at any cost. but to win without losing myself in the process. And maybe, just maybe, that was the real victory all along. The Financial Times article was scheduled to publish on a Thursday. I know because Thomas's surveillance showed Caroline meeting with the reporter, a woman named Rebecca Walsh, who'd built her career on exposés of tech executives. They met at an upscale cafe, Caroline in her carefully chosen outfit that said, "Wronged woman with dignity," Rebecca with her recorder and notebook, ready to capture every tearful confession. Thomas's report was detailed. Caroline had cried, had shown financial documents, had painted a picture of a cold, calculating husband who'd systematically destroyed her while pretending to be generous. The article was scheduled for Thursday. On Wednesday, it was killed. Paul called me at 7 a.m. with the news. "It's not running," he said, disbelief clear in his voice. Walsh pulled it. The Financial Times issued a statement saying after further review, they couldn't verify key claims. What happened? I don't know. But Marcus, someone got to them. Someone provided counter-evidence that made them question Caroline's narrative. I sat up in bed. Who? No idea. But whoever it was, they saved your ass. After I hung up, I had my suspicions. Confirmed an hour later when I received an email from an unfamiliar address. Mr. Steele? You don't know me, but I know your ex-wife's lawyer. He's not as careful with his communications as he should be. The attached documents show that Mrs. Steele was planning to present falsified business records to support her claims of your misconduct. These documents were created last week by a firm she hired specifically for this purpose. I sent the same evidence to Miss Walsh at the Financial Times. She's a good journalist. She won't run a story built on fabricated evidence. Consider this a professional courtesy from someone who believes in actual justice, not manufactured scandals. You're welcome. The email had no signature. The attachment showed exactly what the sender claimed: doctored financial statements, invented employee complaints, fabricated evidence of business misconduct, all created within the past week. All provably false. Caroline had tried to destroy me with lies, and someone I still didn't know who had stopped her. I forwarded the email to Paul. Then I did something I hadn't done in 3 years. I called Caroline. She answered on the 4th ring. What do you want, Marcus? The article didn't run. End quote. Silence. Then, quietly. I know. It didn't run because you were planning to commit fraud, to present fabricated evidence, to destroy me with lies. You destroyed me first. I gave you what you asked for. You tried to invent crimes I didn't commit. There's a difference. Is there? Her voice was brittle, broken. Because from where I'm sitting, we're both exactly the same. Both willing to destroy the other person. Both playing games with people's lives. No, Caroline, we're not the same. I gave you the truth disguised as generosity. You tried to give the world lies disguised as justice. I hung up before she could respond. Outside my window, the sun was rising over the city, gold and crimson, beautiful and temporary. The war was over, not because I'd won, but because we'd both lost enough. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Ethan and I stood on a beach in Costa Rica, watching the sun rise over water so blue it hurt to look at. We'd left everything behind for 2 weeks. No phones, no emails, no news articles or lawyer calls or reminders of the war we'd survived. Just father and son, learning how to exist in a world where the battle was finally over. You think Mom's okay? Ethan asked, his toes digging into the sand. I thought about Caroline. Last I'd heard, she'd sold the Blackwood estate at a loss, liquidated most of the other properties, paid off what debt she could. She and Alex had split, no surprise there. She'd moved into a modest apartment in the city, taken a job at an interior design firm, a normal life. The one she probably should have chosen years ago instead of trying to build an empire on someone else's foundation. I think she's figuring it out, I said. Same as we are. Do you hate her? No, not anymore. I did for a while, but hate is exhausting, buddy. I'm too tired to carry it anymore. Ethan nodded, picked up a shell, examined it, threw it into the waves. You know what's weird? I thought when this was all over, when you'd won or whatever, you'd be happy, but you just seem tired. Winning isn't what I thought it would be, I admitted. I got everything I wanted: freedom, justice, revenge. And it turns out that's not the same as being happy. So what does make you happy? I looked at my son, 15 now, taller than me, growing into someone remarkable. Someone who'd survived his parents' war and emerged kinder than either of us deserved. This, I said, right here, you and me. No schemes, no plans, just being. The sun continued its climb, painting the sky in impossible colors. Behind us, the rental house, where we'd been staying for a week. Ahead of us, another week of nothing but ocean and time. Dad, Ethan said quietly, I'm proud of you. Not for what you did, but for stopping. I'm proud of you too, for being better than both your parents. We stood there as the sun fully cleared the horizon, watching the water turn from dark blue to brilliant turquoise. And I realized something. The silent victory wasn't in destroying Caroline. It wasn't in the elaborate trap or the perfect revenge. It was in this moment, in choosing to walk away from the wreckage, in deciding that being Ethan's father mattered more than being Caroline's nemesis, in learning that sometimes the greatest power is knowing when to stop fighting. Come on, I said, putting my arm around Ethan's shoulders. Let's go get breakfast. I hear they make incredible pancakes. We walked back toward the house, leaving footprints in the sand that the tide would soon erase. Behind us, the past. Ahead of us, whatever came next. And for the first time in 3 years, I was ready for it.